The early spring mist clung to the ramparts of Winterfell, thin as silk yet sharp with cold, wrapping the ancient gray stones in a veil that blurred every edge. Jon Snow stood atop the battlements where once he had watched the world as a nameless boy, then as Lord Commander, then as nothing at all. The soft patter of melting rime whispered beneath Ghost's silent tread. The direwolf paced beside him, crimson eyes reflecting a sky still bruised by dawn. Far to the south, ravens raced on black wings bearing a storm of missives, but none yet reached this tower. The world waited for the last Targaryen who did not wish to be one, and in the wavering hush of morning Jon could almost believe no one would ever find him. Below in the yard, the clang of practice blades rose. Roderick Castle's heirs drilling a dozen green boys, grain haulers and goatswains no older than Jon had been when he first dreamed of a sword that was more than a bastard's plaything. Their laughter was bright, but it struck him like steel on stone because winter had ended and yet another blood-soaked season threatened from the south. Word had traveled north even beyond the wall. King's Landing lay in ruins. Bran the Broken sat the chair of queer wood and iron only to name a council that quarreled like fishmongers. And Sansa wore a crown of snowflakes and dire wolves in a free north that would brook no overlord. The realm had broken apart once already under dragons. It could do so again under ghosts. An oaken door creaked behind him. Davos Seaworth, weather-scarred and tethered ever by loyalty, stepped into the chill with a parchment in hand, the seal cracked, the wax a ragged smear. "Another summons?" Jon asked, though he knew the answer. The former smuggler's eyes said enough. "They mean to hold a great council, this time at Storm's End of all places." Samwell wrote, "A dozen lords ride already. They'll choose a king and they'd have you there, lad." Some whisper your name louder than prayers. Jon's breath clouded in the air. "I gave up crowns. I bent the knee to Daenerys, and then the memory flared, the taste of ash from a scorched city, the look in her eyes before the blade slid in." He tightened his gloved fists. "I have no right to rule. Rights come from swords and stories," Davos said gently. "You have both. And Westeros needs something other than more ashes." He offered the parchment. "Sam says there'll be talk of bastardy. Gendry's in Storm's End already, but half the realm's children wear no father's name. Your voice on such matters could weigh more than we can." Jon took the letter, though his eyes lingered on the horizon. Beyond those rolling fields, the King's Road wound through villages rebuilt on bones. He thought of the small folk who had followed him south to fight the dead, men and women unnamed in any chronicle. He thought of children born in ruined keeps, sons of Sells-words, daughters of serving girls, each burdened by a word none of them had chosen. Bastard. Spring's sun rose slow and pale. When at last he spoke, it came as a sigh. "Ready, escort? If the council wishes to hear me, I'll ride." They departed Winterfell beneath banners half forgotten, the white dire wolf on gray, the merman of White Harbor, the black stag crowned in gold flown for Gendry Baratheon, though he had yet to earn the staghorn helm. Jon rode south with Davos, Tormund Giantsbane, and a retinue of Northmen who would rather have gone back beyond the wall where giants still roamed. Ghost bounded ahead, snow kicked from his paws in plumes that melted before they struck soil. The King's Road unfurled like a scar through awakening countryside, fields tilled by orphans, orchards green with timid shoots, and every mile a ragged post where a charcoal sketch of the new council's seal fluttered for those who could read. At night, Jon's dreams were thick with ghosts. Ygritte's laugh in the steam of a hot spring. Daenerys's hand trembling against his chest, warm only until the breath left her. Ned Stark's steady gaze the evening. He told his snow-skinned son that honor could not mend the world, but a man must try regardless. Dreams and memories braided into waking thought until he wondered whether his council in Storm's End would be just another dream. One more crown he would refuse and another oath he could not bear to keep. 3 leagues north of the Blackwater, they met Samwell Tarly in a roadhouse that smelled of onions and damp wool. Sam's maester's chain clinked when he hugged Jon, too tight, nearly weeping, and shoved into his chilled hands a folio thick with notes. "It's all here," Sam said breathlessly. Demographics of bastardy across the 7 kingdoms, historical precedents for legitimations, figures on tax levies lost due to irregular inheritance laws. Jon thumbed brittle pages of ink and hope. "You've been busy." "I had help," Sam admitted, cheeks pink. Gilly transcribed. Little Sam spilled ink, but only on the margin. He hesitated. "They're not letting the faith dictate terms this time. They seem to want something new, order, fairness, maybe. If you'd speak for the forgotten, the rest of us can write the precedent." Jon laid a calloused hand on Sam's. "I'll try." The walls of Storm's End rose like the bulwark of a god, chiseled from sea-green granite and crowned with battlements that braved every storm the narrow sea could hurl. Wind-carried brine lashed Jon's cloak when he rode beneath the drumming hooves of Baratheon couriers. Torches sputtered in salt-sharp gusts, and banners of every house spiraled against the sky. Sunflowers of the Reach, seahorses of the Isles, red salmon of Riverrun, golden roses still wilting since Marjorie's fall, and high above them all a new standard recently stitched. A dire wolf rampant, its eyes threaded with crimson wool that caught the light like distant embers. Inside the brutally plain keep, lords milled in a hall designed for war, its ceiling lost in shadow. Voices bounced off stone in a babble of titles. Lady Asha Greyjoy, lean and unimpressed, sipped sour wine while Ser Davos murmured news of northern ports. Gendry, broad-shouldered and newly lorded, looked like a blacksmith dressed up as a stag and tried not to scuff the flagstones with nerves. The Prince of Dorne, now a sober-eyed young woman called Lady Namella Santagar, argued heatedly with Jon Royce about dragonfire reparations. Over them all, Lord Edmure Tully shifted from foot to foot, desperate to seem taller. A horn blast stilled the tumult. Bran the Broken's wheeled chair rolled upon a carpet of Myrish weave, pushed by Podrick Payne. The hush was neither reverent nor fearful, it was the hush one holds for a boy they once knew who now sees through ravens. Beside the young king for a moon's length at most, stood Sansa Stark crowned by snow-forged silver, Arya ghosting behind with a voyager's swagger, and Tyrion Lannister whose sardonic smile had frayed from months of negotiation. Bran's voice carried, thin yet resonant. "The crown I wear is a bridge, not a throne. The realm is a tapestry torn by war and old laws. We gather to decide whether that tapestry can be rewoven." He turned his pale gaze upon Jon. "Brother, step forward." Jon felt 1,000 eyes, some brimming with bleak hope, others wary. He advanced until torchlight flared against black curls. Ghost stalked behind, silent but for the wet drip of seawater from his coat. Bran continued, "The realm asks 3 questions. Who shall guide us? What becomes of those called baseborn? And how will justice prevail where titles failed? Speak plain, Jon of House Stark, once of House Targaryen, named Snow but fostered of Winterfell." Torches crackled. Jon's mouth felt dry as desert bone, but he spoke. "I never saw crowns. I knelt before Daenerys Storeborn because I believed the realm needed her fire. That fire burned too hot." Murmurs rippled. He pressed on. "My father was not my father, but he taught me this, a man's worth lies in his word. I gave my word to fight for the living, and I will. If you name me king, know this, there will be no more children punished for the sins of their parents." The wall fell guarding all the realm. Winterfell bled for every house. The free folk fought beside knights. Tell me then why a child should suffer shame at birth. He drew Sam's folio, its parchment rustling like restless wings. "I submit a decree, every man and woman born in the 7 kingdoms, regardless of the vows their parents did or did not take, shall be free to claim a name and inheritance. Bastardy shall be abolished." A stunned silence dropped upon the hall, heavier than any gale battering the walls. For a heartbeat it seemed even the roaring sea outside paused. Gendry's calloused fist thumped his breastplate. "Here, here," he bellowed, voice cracking. From a cluster of Stormlanders came cautious applause, then louder. Davos nodded gravely. Asha Greyjoy smirked, half approval, half challenge. But Redwine lords of the Arbor scowled, muttering of lineage. Lord Paxter Morrigan shouted that precedent was precedent for a reason. Bran raised a hand. "We shall vote. But first the faith must speak." He gestured to Septon Eustace, robes gold embroidered. The Septon cleared his throat. "Bastardy is sin's harvest." "No," Arya cut in, stepping from shadow with fingers on needle's hilt. "Sin is forcing a hungry babe to beg while castles rot from disuse." A murmur of shock skittered. Septon Eustace sputtered, but Tyrion waved a quill. "Let the lady speak." The faith allowed incestuous kings for centuries. It can stomach legitimate children. Laughter, nervous. The arguments stretched until torches burned low. Noble bloodlines recited lineages like scripture. Maesters cited property laws older than Old Town. Through it all, Jon stood unmoving, eyes steady, as though waiting for the world to remember it had nearly ended beneath ice and flame. At last, as violet dusk seeped through arrow slits, Bran rolled forward once more. "We vote." Tokens of carved bone and ivory clacked into a bronze basin. Wolf for yes, lion for no. When Podrick counted before the hushed assembly, the wolves outnumbered lions more than 2-1. Bran's voice, quiet but inexorable, declared, "So do the great houses, the free folk, and the faith decree. Bastardy is abolished." The hall erupted, cheers, curses, disbelief. Lackland knights wept. A highborn lady fainted into her maid's arms. Gendry fell to one knee, hammer sigil hanging around his neck like salvation. Sam smiled through tears. Jon simply closed his eyes. He was not yet king. The council still must elect. But in that roar he heard the realm changing stone by stone. Night-painted storms end in obsidian and pearl. A banquet lit the high hall, but Jon withdrew to the parapet where the sea boomed against foundations older than recorded days. Ghost leaned into his side as if fearing he might drift like foam. Below, flickering torches dotted the shoreline where fisherfolk danced around hastily erected bonfires. They had heard the decree already. Word flew faster than gulls, and for the first time in memory, men born with no sigil danced beside daughters of landed knights. Footsteps approached soft as falling leaf. Sansa's red hair glimmered in torch glow. She surveyed the dark water. "You changed the realm today." "The council did. It was your voice." She studied him. "You smell of salt and wolf, brother. But you also smell of throne rooms." He almost laughed. "I still don't want crowns. Yet if they place one on your head, you'll bear it for them. That is why they will choose you." She touched his arm. "Rule slowly. The North will remain free, but we will stand at your side." He watched her depart, queen in snow and silence, and wondered how many burdens a single heart could carry before it broke. Dawn again, blood-red across slate clouds. The council reconvened, seating lords by rank, though rank felt pale now. Bran, eyes distant as ever, addressed them. "The realm requires a king who fought the night and knows the day." He looked to Jon. "All in favor?" "No tokens this time," voices carried. "I called House Tully, House Arryn, House Tyrell's remnants, even Lady Santagar of Dorne, surprising many." Asha Greyjoy merely shrugged but lifted her quirked hand. Only Paxter Morrigan objected, and when glances froze him like frost, he muttered that perhaps tradition could stand one more blow. So it was done. They crowned him in Storm's End's great yard beneath a squall. A circlet of black steel hammered from melted spears of the dead rested upon Jon's brow. Ghost howled long and low, the sound rolled out over cliffs and waves and set startled cormorants swirling. No trumpets, no dragons, only the ocean's thunderous applause. Jon Snow, no longer Snow, though he kept the name, watched kneeling knights rise ungainly on salted stone. He lifted one hand and found it did not tremble. The first royal decree, inked that afternoon upon crisp parchment, bore the seal of the direwolf crowned. All children born of man and woman within the 7 kingdoms were henceforth legitimate, entitled to name, inheritance, and protection under the laws of the realm. Landless knights would oversee local rolls to register births, funded by a levy upon castles lying fallow. Any lord refusing compliance forfeited title to the crown. The second decree summoned maesters to compile new maps of inheritance, ensuring land could be divided without plunging houses into chaos. A council of builders, drawn from the free folk, the unsullied who chose to stay, and guilds of King's Landing would travel to war-torn hamlets, raising houses for those displaced. Jon signed each with steady strokes, Sam at his elbow, Davos verifying cargoes of grain to be shipped north where harvests lagged. Tyrion drafted cunning tariffs on spice imports to pay for it all. Sansa by Raven promised timber and stone from the north. Across the realm, bastards stirred. In King's Landing, the charnel stench of dragonfire had faded, but streets remained cratered. A slender girl named Maya Stone, who cleaned rubble from the September of Baelor's shattered facade, paused at a crier's proclamation. She touched the ribbon sealing her coarse smock, wept, then laughed so loud a column of dust collapsed around her feet. In the reach, young Eric Flowers, who pruned roses for a minor Tyrell cousin now dead, watched his mistress tear house arms from her banners. He knelt in the dirt of Highgarden's broken heart and felt his own beat like the humming of bees. In Dorne, the gambler known as Sand Silvertongue shattered his dice cup upon hearing that his mother's name would no longer be whispered like a sin. He stared at bleached sky and swore he would ride to Sunspear to claim the father who had sold him for passage on a spice ship. On Pike, a boy born of a reaver's summer raid, once called just Bastard, dragged a weathered longship prow into the surf. Behind him, his mother watched, wide-eyed, as the boy shouted a name for himself that no wave could swallow. Back at Storm's End, King Jon held audience for petitioners. Gendry knelt first and rose Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, his lordship ratified by council and crown alike. The blacksmith-turned-lord thanked his king, then asked leave to ride to every hamlet forging new blades for a rebuilt army. "You'll need a banner," Jon remarked. "I'll bear the crown stag still," Gendry said, "but the heart within will be honest." They clasped forearms. Next came Lady Barbary Dustin, of age yet fierce. She offered grain reserves. In return, she asked that Lady Arya serve as mediator between northern lords disputing over holdings left vacant when former masters burned. Jon agreed. Arya winked, delighted at any excuse for road dust and new names. After her came Tala Tarly with proposals for reformed library networks, Davos with harbor reconstruction drafts, even Bronn of the Blackwater looking for a castle untouched by dragon flame and offering coin for bastardy registers. Tyrion rolled his eyes but took the gold. Each night Jon walked walls listening to wind through crenellations. He felt both older than these stones and as fragile as the sea foam sighing far below. When sleep claimed him, he dreamed not of thrones but of campfires blanketed in snow, of laughter spun beneath an aurora's dancing veil, of a red-haired woman who asked whether a king could truly be free. Weeks later, a pale dawn saw Jon kneel upon cold sand for the first festival honoring legitimacy. Children gathered, boys wearing wolf badges, girls clutching carved weirwood leaves, babes hoisted upon shoulders. Jon presented each with a ribbon dyed storm blue, tying it to wrists so small he feared the thread might cut. He named them aloud: Davia Storm, Eleanor Rivers, Pate Pine, Lily Flowers. Names soared over the roar of gulls and the hush of mothers weeping relief. When he fastened the ribbon around a lad no older than 10, brown-haired, shy, the child whispered, "Am I allowed to learn swordplay now, Your Grace?" "You're allowed anything hard work earns," Jon murmured, ruffling the child's hair. He straightened, met eyes of lords who watched nervously, and thought of the wall's night fires. Those flames flickered again now, not as warning but as beacon. Summer crept north. Grain waved where battlegrounds once festered. Bastard or trueborn, men and women harvested side by side, bound by shared hunger and the promise of new ranks. But old lords grumbled behind closed doors, counting missing tithes, fearing bastards might claim keeps polite blood had abandoned. In Old Town, the High Septon preached unity from a pulpit of shining marble. In gutters nearby, ragged faith militant remnants hissed of unnatural decrees. Spies whispered of a child king hidden across the narrow sea, some pretender blessed by exiled nobles. Jon convened his council beneath the cavernous drum tower of Storm's End. "Change breeds fear," he said, voice echoing. "We must press forward." Tyrion tapped scrolls. The coffers refill slowly but surely. "Trade with Pentos has resumed. They find our decree amusing but profitable." Sansa replied by raven. The North stood ready to mediate with houses refusing compliance, but whispers of Bolton's sympathizers leaked from Deepwood Motte. Arya, traveling the Riverlands, warned of scavenger bands former cells words who raided carriages for lists of legitimized heirs to ransom. Gendry offered to ride with a force of sturdy Smith-trained soldiers. Davos volunteered to ferry grain while seeking out coastline bandits. Sam requested a seat of learning to train scribes for the new roles, and Jon granted him the ruined halls of Harrenhal, haunted but big enough for every parchment in the realm. Outside the tower, thunder growled over slate water. Ghost lifted his nose, the fur along his spine bristling. Jon felt it too, not weather but something deeper, a turning of tides unwitnessed. The legitimization was only the first wave. The greater storm would test whether stone rules or hearts do. That winter, gentle, almost shy, dusted the Dornish marches with frost. Jon rode incognito, cloak unmarked save a pin of plain iron, to witness the decree's ripples. In a half-ruined inn near the Mander, he met a traveling troupe led by a woman who introduced herself as Ilaria Stone, once a washerwoman's daughter. Her players recited a bawdy farce about a bastard who became king, full of japes at prissy lords. The crowd roared approval. Ilaria bowed to Jon's coin, unaware she bowed to the king himself. Farther north, he broke bread with a hedge knight, Ser Harwin Rivers, who confessed his father was a Tully stable-aster but who now trained squires of both birthrights without distinction. In the Vale, Emo. Untamed clans sent envoys offering obsidian arrowheads in thanks, for their children had long been called Snow whether born high or low. Not all news heartened him. A raven intercepted in the Dornish desert spoke of a conspiracy among 3 houses of the Reach, plotting to appeal to the Iron Bank to withhold loans unless legitimizations were taxed. The ink smelled of treachery. Jon spurred Ghost to outrun the sand wind, determined to return to Storm's End before Blades did. Upon arrival, he found Tyrion hunched over ledgers, silver-streaked hair wild. Letters from Bravos, the hand muttered, but also envoys from Volantis praising your progressive reign. They offer ships in exchange for timber. We could bankrupt the Reach Lords by opening trade south. Jon grunted. Better to reason than ruin. Your benevolence will be the death of your enemies, Tyrion mused. How poetic. They summoned the Reach Lords to court, offered tax relief for vineyards ravaged by drought in exchange for public oaths endorsing the new laws. Reluctance melted under the twin heats of economic lifeline and a direwolf's steady gaze. One by one, bastion walls lowered. By the time roses bloomed crimson across high gardens, repaired trellises, the decree had woven into daily life like warp through weft. Bastard no longer stung, it merely described what had been, not what must be. Yet kingdoms seldom rest easy. Come a dusky autumn eve, a galley from Pentos docked at King's Landing, sails ragged but masthead held high. Its captain, a gaunt man with eyes like ink, carried a sealed scroll for King Jon. The parchment bore a sigil none in the throne room recognized, a chimera clutching a babe. The message within was sparse. Heir of the dragon born beyond storm. True son of Rhaegar, fostered in the Shadowlands. Claims the name Aemon Targaryen, crowned by blood magic. Comes to claim his birthright. Jon felt the old ache behind his ribs. Another ghost of dragon fire walking out of myth to test a world barely rebuilt. Tyrion exhaled a low curse. Davos fingered the hilt of his sword as though it could slice prophecy. Jon folded the message. We greet him with open harbor. Bastards and princes alike have a place if they come in peace. And if not, asked Arya, newly returned, her knife reflecting torchlight like a sliver of moon. Then the new laws will be tested by the oldest truth, Jon said quietly. Only the living may shape the living world. Southwind carried whispers of this would be Aemon. Some hailed him as savior to dragon loyalists still mourning Daenerys. Others cursed him as a warlock's puppet. Merchants traded coins minted with a boy's pale profile, collectors' trinkets, or seditious currency. Jon's council debated sending ships to intercept. He listened, nodded, but dreamed each night of ravens blotting a red sky, of children wearing new names cowering beneath old flames. In one such dream, his father, or the man he called father, stood upon the wall's frozen height. A king is a shield, Ned Stark murmured, snow swirling through beard gone silver. But even shields must know which blows they can bear. Jon woke before dawn, sweat cold, heart loud, and ordered messages to every corner, rally but hold your swords. A king would parley first. The would-be Aemon did not come with sails. He came with stories. Pilgrims carried them ahead, a youth of silver hair, violet eyes, able to conjure flickering fires shaped like dragons that never truly burned. In Lys he healed pox. In Myr he paid debts of street urchins. In Volantis he preached that bloodlines must bind, not divide. Jon listened to rambled tales from seamen in the throne room and wondered, a rival or a mirror? Ghost nuzzled his hand, huffing warm breath that smelled vaguely of river trout. We have our own magic, Jon told the direwolf, though perhaps he meant the law they forged, the children they freed. Winter closed its fist softly. Frost rhymed the battlements of Storm's End, white as the star-salt cresting waves. Jon stood before the council. Sansa by Raven, now Lady Protector of the North. Sam tall in new maester's robes threaded with jet. Davos, Gendry, Arya, Brienne of Tarth bearing a new generation of knights, and Tyrion pale but unbowed. The realm is changed, he said. Bastards are children, children are people, and people make kingdoms. Not blood, not fire. He regarded each in turn. If Aemon Targaryen brings peace, we welcome him. If he brings war, we remember the dead and deny him. Gendry thumped a mailed fist, echo carrying through laurel-scented air. Arya smiled like a wolf glimpsing prey. Tyrion sipped arbor red and mused that at least the next chapter would not lack intrigue. Jon lifted his circlet of black steel from his brow and set it upon the carved chair that had replaced the Iron Throne's twisted blades. A crown is weight. Tonight it rests. Tomorrow we see if the world can bear it alongside me. Thunder growled distant. The hall lanterns flickered. Somewhere on the rain-slicked docks, fishermen sang a new shanty about bastards turned princes, kings who shared names with snowstorms, and dire wolves guarding the morning. The song rose through arrow slits, braided with the sea's restless hymn, and for a breath the whole of Westeros seemed to inhale together, waiting to discover whether hope could outlast the tempests to come. Far away, a lone raven beat against violet skies, wings lacquered in dusk. It carried no scroll, no emblem. Only a feathered shard of night traveling toward Winterfell, toward a kingdom whose very stones were learning a new story. That bastards could be kings, and kings could be men who remembered they were once bastards, too. Thus the tale began its next turn, slow as the wheel of stars, swift as the first breath of a child given a rightful name. The gulls cried at dawn like restless children, their wings carving pale arcs above the ramparts of Storm's End as the sea rolled in long furrows of pewter and foam. Jon Snow, newly crowned yet still unaccustomed to the weight of iron and expectation, descended the worn spiral stairs that led from his modest solar to the eastern parapet. A sleepless night had left grit in his eyes and a dull ache at his temples, symptoms, Maester Sam insisted, of minds that bore too many burdens and permitted too little rest. But dreams had fled him long ago, and he would not summon them back with draughts of sweet sleep when duty prowled the corridors like a silent cat. Below, the courtyards of the great castle stirred to life. Armorers hammered out bent helms and battered gorgets to fill the new levy's racks. Bakers rolled dough into rings of pale gold, their ovens perfuming sea-damp air with warmth and spice. Pages hurried between stables and gatehouses, messages tucked in belts, while Lady Brienne drilled squires in the yard nearest the sea. Her voice rang out over the crash of waves, steady, patient, uncompromising, and Jon paused to watch a boy scarcely older than little Sam scramble to his feet after a clumsy fall. Bastard or prince, Brienne heeded only effort. The boy's grin when she offered a rare nod of approval told Jon the lad would remember that moment until his dying day. He turned from the sight, leaning on the crenel. Far out among the whitecaps, ships bobbed at anchor, galleys of the crown with dire wolf standards stitched beside the old Baratheon stag, swan-proud cogs from the Reach, and a trio of sleek eastern merchantmen whose captains had petitioned for audience. Somewhere among those hulls might hide spies in service to the rumored Aemon or to other factions yet unseen. The thought coiled like cold iron around Jon's heart. The realm's newborn laws were tender saplings, a careless boot or a sharp frost could still break them. Footsteps announced Davos Seaworth long before the man spoke. Years of ship decks and narrow escapes lent his tread a sailor's cadence, purposeful and rhythmic. Hardly slept, I'll wager, Davos said as he reached Jon's side, eyes sweeping the sea with habitual wariness. Storm's End was built to stand against tempests, but it's no quieter than a forecastle come morning. Jon allowed himself a thin smile. The wind's kinder than council debate. I'll take gulls over quarreling lords. Speaking of quarreling, Davos said, producing a rolled parchment, the Dornish envoy arrived at first light. She carries word from Lady Nymella. Dorne accepts the decree, but they'll insist on their own designs for inheritance. Equal shares among all offspring, legitimate or no, male or female. Says it's always been their way. That will please the sand snakes, if they still style themselves so, Jon mused. And it sets a precedent the Reach may hate. Better hatred than swords, Davos replied. We endured 9 years' war once because lords quibbled over rights to a cloak. He offered Jon the parchment. Read it later. The envoy's lodged in the East Guest Tower. Wants an audience by midday. I will grant it, Jon said, tucking the scroll inside his cloak. Any word of our pretender prince? A shadow still. Merchants swear he boarded a Bravosicog named the Silver Crane. But the crane left Pentos 5 weeks past and hasn't made Tyrosh yet, so the tide tongues claim. Might be truth, might be smoke. Jon exhaled. Smoke can blind as well as fire. Keep watch. If a single hull breaks horizon with Targaryen colors, I want ravens in the sky before their anchor bites mud. Davos nodded. And if the prince proves real? Then we speak with him, Jon answered, though uncertainty gnawed. If his claim is peace, we hear it. If war, we answer. The old smuggler studied him a moment, weathered face impassive. You've a healer's heart and a soldier's scars, lad. Just see you guard one with the other. He left Jon with that counsel, simple as salt yet sharp as any blade. Jon lingered until the sun cleared the eastern clouds, gilding the tower's gray granite with fleeting warmth. Ghost padded up the stairwell then, fur bristling against swirling air, and pressed a cold nose into Jon's palm. Together they gazed upon the awakening world, king and direwolf and dawn. By midday the throne room's torches flickered low, torpid in the mild spring draft that slipped through narrow embrasures. Jon sat the storm chair. He refused a new iron throne of blades, while his council fanned across the dais. Tyrion scribbling marginalia, Sam clutching a ledger of population rolls, Gendry testing the weight of a ceremonial hammer he despised, Arya lounging like a cat at the foot of a pillar, expression unreadable. The Dornish envoy stepped forward when announced, her sand-colored robes edged in copper thread. Rings glittered on brown fingers, her hair was bound with a strip of crimson silk. She bowed neither deep nor long, Dorne bowed for few, but her voice held courtesy when she spoke. I am Sarah Cummer Santagar, blood of the blood royal and voice of Sunspear. Lady Namella sends warm winds and sharper words. She unfurled a scroll, reading with clear diction. Dorne rejoices that the stain of bastardy is lifted, yet reminds the crown that in the south we have long held all daughters and sons equal before inheritance. We will teach the realm how such balance endures. Accept our counsel or expect us to remain apart as we have before. She finished, meeting Jon's eyes without flinch. My lady desires alliance, not division, but Dorne will not bend old custom to new fashion. Jon rose, cloak brushing the carved wolf heads adorning the chair. Your lady forgets I was raised in the north, where daughters learn blade and bow beside their brothers. Equality is no insult. Dorne's practice may serve the realm. He glanced at Sam. Maester, how would such change affect current roles? Sam swallowed, pages rustling. If the realm adopted absolute primogeniture, titles could split among daughters presently overlooked. It would avert some disputes but spark others where entailments specify male heirs. Tyrion tapped his quill. Solution, grant great houses choice. Those wishing Dornish succession may amend charters with royal assent. Those who won't needn't. Meanwhile, crown lands and new baronies follow Dorne's equal rule, setting example without edict. Sarah folded her arms. A compromise fit for a Sellsword contract. Yet it breathes south wind into stagnant halls. Sunspear might agree. Then we'll draft terms, Jon said, signaling Tyrion. A realm built on freedom cannot impose chains of inheritance by might alone. Sarah bowed slightly deeper, lips curling. The mother of mountain smiles upon such wisdom. When she departed, Tyrion exhaled. One front calmed. 7 more remain. 6, Arya corrected, flicking a throwing knife between fingers. I left a message for Lord Morrigan. Told him if he hindered the king's law again, I'd carve crow wings on his wife's favorite horse. Gendry choked. Gods, Arya? He'll heed it. She twirled the blade, gaze cool. Jon pinched the bridge of his nose. We rule by law, not threats. Threats are law in half the Riverlands, Arya replied, all flint and dark affection. She slid the knife home. But I'll behave if you insist. As afternoon waned, a raven arrived bearing a sigil Jon scarcely recognized. A white harp on twilight blue, House Risswell of Stony Shore. The letter within told of Bolton sympathizers stirring peasants against the new decrees, preaching that legitimized bastards would seize small folk cattle and daughters alike. Unrest simmered from Barrowton to Widow's Watch. Jon summoned Sansa by mirror in the castle's small solar, an innovation of glass and polished silver the Iron Bank gifted early in his reign, allowing speech across leagues. Her reflection flickered, red hair bright even through spectral shimmer. I've dispatched Ser Rabar Royce with 300 archers, she said, voice crisp. They'll pacify troublemakers, but root goes deeper, hunger. Last winter's stores ran thin. I'll divert Dorish grain through White Harbor, Jon offered. Doubt not the North's loyalty. They fear change, but they'll follow you. Sansa's smile was a blade's edge. Fear can curdle into hate, brother. We must feed both stomach and spirit. Write them, Jon. Your words carry more than mine, with some still calling you Stark before King. I will. He hesitated. Any sign of Rickon? Sansa's eyes softened. Not since the last raven. Skagos is barren, its clans keep their secrets. But we do not abandon kin. She touched the glass. Be well. Her image dissolved to silver ripples. Jon stared at his own ghostly shape a moment, dark hair, eyes wintergray, shoulders bent unconsciously under a crown he rarely wore. Ghost whined at the doorway, sensing heaviness on his master. Jon knelt, burying blunt fingers in thick white fur. Promise me, he murmured, words meant for no ears but the direwolf's, promise me I won't lose myself to this. Ghost's tongue rasped across his cheek, smelling of wind and horsemeat. It was answer enough. Night draped the keep in velvet. A hush lay over the banquet hall save the soft clink of cups and the occasional murmur from posted guards. Jon paced before tall windows, too restless for bed, when a breath of cold sent candles guttering beneath the lintels. He turned, and Bran stood there, unmoving, his wheeled chair absent, his feet bare upon flagstone though he could not feel them. Jon's throat tightened. Brother, how did you come? Bran's eyes, endless and pale as moonlit ice, regarded him without blinking. I walk paths whispers cannot follow. His voice floated, distant yet intimate, like wind in dead leaves. I needed to see what choices you weave. Sit then. Jon reached to guide him, astonished muscle obeying reflex, but Bran's form drifted weightlessly to a chair near the hearth as though moved by unseen hands. Perhaps, Jon thought, by ravens. You bind the realm with new thread, Bran said. A thread phrase under strain. I know. Jon poured mulled wine, hand shaking faintly as he set a cup before his brother. Tell me what you see. Bran's gaze turned inward. I see bastards carrying banners with pride. I see halls named for children once hidden. I see a dark prow cleaving the narrow sea, dragonhead carved from obsidian, its figurehead weeping black fire. And I see snow falling on a field of red flowers where no flowers grow. Jon's breath misted though the room was warm. The pretender? Bran inclined his head. Not all pretenders are false. Some are mirrors showing faces we fear. He tilted the cup but did not drink. When you meet him, remember the pact of truth. Jon frowned. What pact? You made it long ago beneath an ancient tree. My sword for the living, you said. Keep that promise, and the living will keep you. Before Jon could press, Bran's form flickered like candlelight in wind, and was gone, leaving only the undisturbed chair and 2 cups breathing steam. No watch reported the king's brother entering or leaving. The next dawn, ravens perched on every parapet, silent as carved jet. 3 days later, lookouts sighted sails on the horizon. Not the black and red sigils of old Valyria, but white canvas sewn with unmarked circles, a Braavosi design. The silver crane its captain declared as the galley came alongside Storm's End's breakwater, though age and hard voyages had tarnished the once gleaming fretwork at her prow. Jon summoned his guard. He wore plain leathers beneath a fur-lined cloak, crown left in its chest. Tyrion accompanied him, flanked by Brienne and a dozen Dawhold spearmen. Ghost trotted at his heel. Dockhands scurried aside when the crane dropped gangplank. First came Braavosi oarsmen, olive-skinned and wary. Then a tall woman in starched robes, clearly a priestess of the Moonsingers by her silver crescent torque. She bowed, palm over heart. Your Grace, I am Neria, voice of the Tattered Book. We carry your guest. Her accent traced eastern waters, vowels soft. Jon dipped his head. And does he come of his own will? He comes by tides older than kings. She turned, beckoning. From the galley's shadow emerged a boy no older than 15. Silver blonde hair fell straight to jaw, framing a face too solemn for such youth. His eyes, an eerie amethyst, surveyed the dock with neither fear nor arrogance, curious, perhaps, but measured. He wore a tunic of midnight wool bound with a thin chain of steel links. At his waist swung no sword, only a leather satchel inscribed with arcane runes. He walked until he stood a spear's length from Jon. Ghost sniffed the air, hackles twitching, but did not growl. The boy inclined his head. Your Grace, I am Aemon Waters, though some name me Targaryen. His voice carried a lilt of summer seas meeting stone. My mother was Manella of Lys. My father, they tell me, was Rhaegar. I claim no crown stolen. I seek only to speak. Jon studied him. No rattle of destiny clanged in his mind, only a flicker of recognition. The boy's eyes mirrored those of a sister lost to fire. Jon motioned to the castle. Speak then. You're welcome as guest while words suffice. They entered Storm's End under gray clouds. In the small audience chamber, Jon dismissed most guards, retaining only Ghost and Tyrion. Aemon settled across a rough-hewn table, fingers tracing knots in the wood. I was fostered by shadow binders in Ass High, he began. They taught me that names are keys. They said my name might open doors in Westeros, doors of power, doors of doom. I listened, but I asked instead of healing of unnaming pain. Jon folded arms. Shadowbinders are not known for kindness. They are known for secrets. Aemon met his gaze. I learned fire sigils. Not tea. Oh, burned citadels, but to knit bone, slow fever. Listeners came, lepers from the Jade Gates, children riddled with storm pox. I never knew war as you did, I knew only disease. Tyrion tapped a shortened finger. Commendable, but Westeros is scarred by swords. Why leave your work? Because prophecy hunts me, the boy said simply. I dreamed of a sword forged from grief, thrust into my breast, forging me anew. I awoke knowing I must journey west and meet the Wolf King who would judge my flame. Jon stilled. Dreams are wind. Dreams are paths, Aemon returned. He opened his satchel. From within he withdrew a small coil of black glass, dragonstone, polished, etched with spirals. He laid it on the table. I brought a gift. A lantern. Fire flickers within when held by one who means to mend rather than rend. Jon hesitated, then reached. The stone fit his palm like lingering warmth. A faint ember glowed at its core, steady as a heartbeat. Tyrion swore under breath. Parlor trick. Intent, Aemon corrected. If falsity beats in your chest, it stays dark. Jon returned the lantern. You seek her judgment. What judgment? Let me serve, the youth said. Not as king, 7 gods forbid, but as healer, lore master. Let me teach villages how to cleanse water, how to brew tinctures. Let me carry the decree of legitimacy to harbor slums where bastards drown unnoticed. In exchange, acknowledge my blood, erase the stain my mother carried to her grave. Ghost shifted, nose twitching. Jon touched the direwolf's ruff. Your blood is your own. The decree already names you legitimate. Not in records beyond the sea, Aemon replied. Only a royal seal can quiet those who would use my name for war. Tyrion's eyebrows rose. A parchment and a stipend against rebellion? Cheap bargain. Jon frowned. Some will still rally to a dragon banner. I will denounce them, Aemon said. Spell or steal as needed. Jon studied him again. The boy's calm belied heartbreak. Lines of sleepless nights etched faint around violet eyes. You may stay, he decided. We'll draft letters confirming your legitimacy. In return, teach our alchemists your healing arts. And swear before gods and men that you will not pursue claim to throne greater than your own name. I so swear, Aemon said, voice quiet but clear. He placed hand upon the dragonstone. Its ember flared, casting red light across the chamber walls like dawning sun. A fortnight spiraled by while storms end adjusted to its unlikely guest. Aemon spent dawns in the rookery conversing with Maester Colwyn on obsidian filtration, midday in the yard guiding healers' apprentices through herb distillations, nights in the library copying scrolls of Valyrian that Sam retrieved from crumbling chests. Rumors buzzed, of course, some said he commanded shadows, others that he sang to moonlight. Yet no mischief marred his stay. Meanwhile, the realm's gears ground forward. Surveyors dispatched by Tyrion returned from the Crownlands with reports of ruined manors suitable for redistribution to families formerly landless. Brienne's inclusive knighthood initiative drew dozens of applicants from birthrights both high and low. Sam's census revealed startling numbers. Near 10,000 children claimed names under the decree within a single moon's turn. Resistance persisted. House Peak barred its gates to royal scribes. House Florent demanded gold to verify new lineages, but defiance waned as trade blossomed and small folk found champion voices among new justices drawn from bastards granted estate offices. One crisp morning, Gendry arrived at Jon's study, brow sheened with sweat from the forge he insisted on maintaining within the keep. He hefted a wrapped bundle, unrolling linen to reveal a crown of mingled black steel and pale bronze. Gone were dragon wings, instead, wolf fangs interlaced with stag antlers around a circlet of hammered runes. Thought you might wear one forged by friend, not by ghosts, he said gruffly. Jon lifted the weight, surprisingly light, the metal tempered thin yet strong. Fitting, he admitted. But I'll still wear it seldom. A symbol's only seen if shown, Gendry grinned. Yet up to you. I've hammering to do new anchor chains for the fleet. He departed, leaving the crown upon vellum maps. Jon regarded it, admiring subtle artistry. No jewels, only metal shaped like waves and weirwood leaves. It spoke of unity more than dominion. He set it aside, turning to letters. One from Lord Ryswell thanking him for the promised grain, one from Arya describing a skirmish with slavers near Fairmarket. She liberated 20 captives, half of whom sought posts in his expanding road-building corps. Another from Sarah Cumer approving the succession compromise. And a delicately scented parchment from Sarah, again, purely personal, inviting him to Sunspear in winter to witness the Festival of Blossoms. Tyrion, reading over his shoulder, muttered something about diplomatic wine soured by sandstorm hearts. Midway through afternoon, bells tolled thrice, signal of unscheduled envoys. Jon descended to the courtyard where a strange procession waited. At its head, a gaunt septon in patched robes bore a wooden chest flanked by barefoot penitents. He knelt, beard bristling like winter thistles. "Your Grace," he croaked, "we come from the starry September. The High Septon sends relics lost during sack of Old Town, offerings toward your just rule." He unlatched the chest. Inside lay shards of crystal, a cracked coronet of alabaster, and a heavy tome bound in pale leather. Tyrion squinted. Holy remains, or scriptural flotsam? They are what hope salvaged, the septon insisted. Let them sanctify your new order." Jon nodded politely, though he wondered at motives. He accepted the gifts, ordering care and study. As the penitents retreated, one lingered, a young woman with blank eyes filmy white. She pivoted, fixing Jon with unseeing stare. "A crown forged of mercy sits uneasy," she intoned in voice not her own. "Beware the quiet blade of gratitude." Ghost bristled. Guards advanced, but Jon raised hand. The woman blinked, confusion surfacing. She stumbled, guided away by fellows. Tyrion inhaled. "Lovely. Prophets everywhere." "Prophets follow vacuum," Jon said quietly. He watched the retreating penitents. "We leave none." Summer approached like a cautious lover, yellowing grass tips and coaxing blossoms from orchard boughs. Storm's End thrummed with construction, masons expanding barracks for newly sworn city wardens, an order comprising legitimacy-tested recruits from every region. Jon insisted each recruit read and swear to a charter overseen by Davos and Sam, blending northern honor codes with Braavosi civil statutes. The wardens would police ports, protect small-folk caravans, and enforce decrees where local lords failed. Not 3 leagues inland, Fields hosted the first harvest moot, a gathering of farmers invited to speak grievances directly to royal ministers. Tyrion had scoffed at the notion of shepherds lecturing lords, but after the first moot yielded innovative crop rotation plans and volunteer labor drafts, even he conceded its merits. Jon attended in plain tunic, sitting on a stump amid hay bales, listening to an elderly carrot farmer describe rot creeping from marshlands. Eamon sat beside him, charting soil pH levels with charcoal on a board, explaining fungal balance in terms simple enough for children chasing pigs through puddles. Laughter overrode fear, and when the farmer departed with promised lime shipments, Jon felt a rare buoyancy lighten his chest. It lasted until dusk, when a rider from Old Town tore up the King's Road, lathered horse staggering. The man collapsed at Jon's feet, thrusting a letter sealed with wax depicting scales of justice cracked in half. Tyrion slid it open. His face drained. "What is it?" Jon asked. "House Peak," Tyrion whispered. "They've raised banners against the decree. 2,000 spearmen, 300 knights, marching on Tumbleton. They claim bastards murdered a Peak cousin, likely fabrication, and declare your rule heresy." Jon's jaw tightened. "How soon can we reach Tumbleton?" "A week if we ride light," Davos said grimly. "Quicker by river, but ships scarce." Eamon spoke. "Let me go. I know mending, not war, but armies falter when blood warms wrong hands. I can heal, speak reason." Jon clasped the boy's shoulder. "Your courage is noted, but rebellion meets king. Tyrion muster 200 wardens and our fastest outriders. Brienne commands vanguard. Gendry holds Storm's End with Sam. Ghost," the dire wolf perked. "You ride with me." Orders flew. Ravens beat into twilight. Jon donned mail and the new crown, feeling its bronze antlers whisper of storms past and ahead. As he swung into saddle, he recalled Bran's omen. Snow upon a field of red flowers. Tumbleton's banner bore a red rose on white. He spurred his horse into gathering dark. They rode swift, for the river Mander's flatlands allowed cavalry to churn leagues beneath moonlight. Brienne led, her horse Thunder plowing mud like a warhammer. Arya ghosted ahead as scout, vanishing into reed beds, returning with count of enemy pickets. At her report of peak numbers swelling by Sellsword bands, Jon ordered flanking maneuvers. Davos with wardens circled east through Low Bog, while Jon and Brienne would strike the main host at dawn. On the third night, campfires of peak forces flickered across a meadow strewn with half-grown barley. Jon stood on a rise, ghostly fireflies orbiting his cloak. He addressed commanders, simple language, iron resolve. "We fight not to break House Peak," he said, "but to break fear. Spare those who yield. Protect small folk. Let no barns burn." Brienne's blue eyes flashed approval. Arya grinned, spinning needle. Davos murmured a prayer to the mother. Dawn bled across misty fields as their trumpets rang. The battle was fierce but brief. Many peak levies, conscripted serfs fearing loss of land to legitimized bastards, broke before Brienne's charging wedge. Arya slipped behind enemy lines, hamstringing horses and cutting banners. Davos's flank drove terrified Sellswords into the river where wardens captured them. Lord Peak himself, a gaunt man with weeping sores, fell from saddle under Jon's sword but lived. Jon spared him, binding wounds with his own kingly cloak before handing him to medics. By noon, barley stalks lay trampled, but barns stood unscorched. Ghost, muzzle stained pink, guarded prisoners with low growls. Eamon moved among wounded, lantern stone glowing as he stitched and salved. Some swore the wound on Lord Peake's thigh ceased festering when the boy pressed warm glass to it, though maesters later muttered about simple cauterization. Jon convened a field tribunal before sunset. Peake knights knelt, swearing fealty anew. Jon stripped the lord of half his lands, granting them to tenant farmers who'd fought to defend barns from their own master's torchmen. The rebels' banners he returned, instructing they henceforth depict red rose entwined with open hand, a symbol of peace earned, not demanded. When the army broke camp 2 days later, wagons rolled behind laden with wounded tended by Eamon's herbs. Small folk lined road verges, many bearing ribbons of legitimacy, blue for Kingsland bastards, brown for reach, white for riverlands. They called blessings after Jon. He rode humbly, cloak patched at the shoulder, ghost pacing guard. Yet one evening, as the host camped where wild irises speckled ponds, Arya came to Jon's fire, pale features set. She tossed before him a torn scrap, a Peake sergeant's ledger listing payments from Lord Paramount of Highgarden, discreet. Might be old, she said, voice low. Might be plot deeper. Jon's brows knit. The Tyrells were dead, their remnants scattered among cousins. Highgarden's new stewardship lay with Lady Jolene Tarley, Sam's distant kin. Could she fund rebellion? Or was some other force forging receipts? Tyrion, reading by torch, narrowed eyes. Counterfeits. Note the flourished P. Abravosi style. Someone means to pit houses. Who benefits? Davos mused. Arya pointed her knife north. Bolton men yearning for flayed banners? Lannisters skulking? Maybe dragons. Jon remembered the blind woman's prophecy, beware gratitude's blade. Rebellion born of fear, stoked by unknown patron, could spread. Double the ravens, he ordered. Send scouts to Highgarden quietly. And station wardens along trade roads. If someone feeds lies, we starve them of routes. Returning to Storm's End, Jon found repairs near completion. New watchtowers, grain silos near the docks, a small Valyrian steel library Sam dubbed the Lantern Hall. Yet as King dismounted, a hush greeted him. No cheerful call of masons, no ringing hammers. Gendry met him, soot streaking his cheek. Ghost of plague, the smith murmured. 9 children in Fisher Quarter. Fever like wildfire. Eamon stepped forward from shadow, eyes shining with worry. Let me see them. Jon placed guiding hand on the boy's back. Go. Take Maester Colwyn. Anything you need, you have. The epidemic proved swift but localized, rotted water barrels near wharf. Eamon's tinctures of boiled willow bark and ground ghost pepper stemmed delirium. Colwyn sanitized wells with lime. Jon visited infected huts barefaced, ignoring counsel to mask. He sat by bunks, telling stories of snow wolves and summer cherries until tremors eased. Within 5 days, outbreak quelled. Fisherfolk hailed Eamon Dragon of Mercy. Jon drafted proclamations. Every town must appoint water watchers and build biosand filters, design provided by Eamon's diagrams. He affixed royal seal, the wax-shaping direwolf stag symbol, and Tyrion arranged funds via tariffs on Arbor wine. News of the victory over plague spread faster than pestilence. In White Harbor, Lady Manderley announced festivals honoring the decree. In Gulltown, bailiffs removed fines on bastards fishing tidal pools. Even Peake survivors, penitent, sent grain north. Yet storms gather beyond good tidings. A raven from Sunspear arrived at dusk, messaged terse. Corsairs under black sail raid stepstones, slaving those wearing blue legitimacy ribbons bound for Dornish markets. Worse, reports claimed Corsairs bore sigil of fiery hand, symbol once used by followers of Lawler in Volantis. Jon's war council assembled under candlelight. Sarah Cumer, still guest, slammed palm on table. If these red Corsairs traffic freefolk, Dorne will lose spears. Yet stepstones are crown protectorate. Tyrion donned reading spectacles, scanning trade logs. Corsair admiral named Mailer of the Flame. Former Volantine Triarch aspirant. Expelled years ago for heresy. Now hunts in pure blood. Our legitimized children are prize. Brienne unsheathed oathkeeper. We sail then, your grace. Jon met her fervent gaze, feeling weariness claw his bones, yet resolve spark anew. Yes, but swift and silent. Davos, ready Black Betha. Gendry, forge grappling hooks and bolt cutters. Arya, gather 4 of your silent sisters, the stepstones hold shadows. Eamon rose. I will join. Jon started to object, but the boy's stare shone unwavering. Corsairs brand slaves with fire. I can ease the burns. Jon nodded slowly. So be it. But stay by Sam when battle begins. Ghost's tail flicked. Or called again. Under moonless sky, Black Betha cut black waves with only dim lanterns shuttered tight. Davos stood at helm, sea salt spraying his beard. Jon and Brienne watched the horizon, faint silhouettes of jagged islands creeping closer. Wind smelled of kelp and distant smoke. Below deck, Eamon mixed salves by candle stub. Sam catalogued scalpel sizes, hands trembling at thought of battle but jaw set. Arya hunched near bow, oiling needle. Her eyes glinted like obsidian beneath pulled hood. They anchored in a shallow cove before dawn. Scouts rode ahead, returning with grim news. Corsair fort occupied abandoned Tyroshi keep on cliff. Slave pens in caverns. Guard numbers unknown. Jon assembled strike teams. Arya and her shadows scaled cliffs at dusk to cut lantern ropes. Brienne would lead Wedge through gate once dark. Jon with Ghost and dozen wardens infiltrated seaward cave tunnels. Davos kept Betha ready to ferry freed captives. Signal came as silent flourish of red-dusted sand tossed from cliff. Arya's sign. Jon's band slipped into surf-slapped cavern mouth, wading knee-deep through tide pools glowing with ghostly plankton. Ghost padded atop wet stone like moonbeam. Sentries fell quick to arrows. Needle flashed once against throat. Jon advanced through torchlit passages where iron bars penned ragged souls branded with fist of flame. He shattered locks with axe butt. Follow quietly, he whispered. Screams erupted above. Brienne's charge met Corsair shouts. Steel clanged, arrows hissed. Jon pressed on, freeing cell after cell, Eamon tending scorched wrists with salve that sizzled. The boys' lantern stone pulsed, guiding captives through gloom. At last, they reached Central Hall. Columns painted with lewd Valyrian frescoes encircled brazier where Corsair Admiral stood, a towering man clad in scarlet scale, eyes gleaming fanatical gold. He held a brand of iron, white-hot. False king, he roared across echoing chamber, voice booming. You poison bloodlines, raise mongrels to thrones. Fire purifies. Jon stepped forward, sword drawn. Fire burns. People build. The admiral hefted curved blade. Purity or ash? They met in clash of sparks. Jon's northern steel parried sweeping arcs, Wolfheart hammered steady. The admiral fought with zealotry yet zeal misread footwork. Jon slipped under wild slash, drove pommel into scorched breastplate, spun and sliced hamstring. The man toppled, brand clattering. Ghost lunged, fangs closing on sword arm until steel fell. Jon held blade at foe's throat. Surrender. Never to bastards, spat the admiral, spittle mixing with blood. Jon's jaw set. Mercy for living, justice for dead. He struck pommel, knocking the man senseless, then ordered shackles. Arya arrived, crimson flecks on cheek. 8 taken. Brienne holds courtyard. Ships burning. Hours later, dawn painted smoke plumes rose gold. Captives 300 souls, children included, boarded Black Betha. Eamon soothed brands. Davos charted return to Storm's End, but Jon commanded detour to Sunspear, where freed could rest under Dornish law before journeying home. Sarah Kummer met them at pier, tears wetting copper shawl when she saw blue ribbons on rescued children. She knelt to Jon. Dorne is with you until last breath of sand, she vowed. Back at Storm's End weeks afterward, Jon convened the first assembly of hands, voices from each kingdom, high and humble, sworn to advise future decrees. They met in lanternlit rotunda lined by banners devoid of bastard sigils now meaningless. Eamon sat among healers. Sarah among traitors. A farmer from Tumbleton beside Lady Dustin, a Bravosi cell sail beside Jon Royce. Their debate rang lively, respectful. As session closed, Jon addressed them. We have weathered plague of blood and plague of fire. Bastards bear names. Children freed from chains weave their stories with ours. Yet storms will come again. Unity is our harbor. He donned Gendry's crown for the first time before full assembly. Antlers and wolf fangs caught torchlight like dawn across frost. Cheers swelled, echoing stone vaults, not of blind fealty but shared resolve. That night, alone on parapet, Jon recalled Bran's omen. Snow had not yet fallen on red flowers, but winter abided beyond horizon. He inhaled salt, felt Ghost press against his thigh, and in that moment understood kingship was not end but endless path, walked with companions who bore their own torches. Across the sea of stars, the wheel of constellations turned. Perhaps prophecy still hunted him, perhaps gratitude's blade waited. Yet as wind knotted his cloak and far below waves murmured secrets older than kingdoms, Jon Snow, Wolf King, once bastard, found quiet certainty. He would meet every storm with open hand and tempered steel, for he was forged not from crowns nor dragons, but from snow and fire and the unshakable truth that all men deserved a name. And Westeros, scarred yet mending, breathed with him, one realm, one people, learning to dream beyond the walls of blood that had bound them for so long. The raven arrived at storm's end beneath a bruised purple dawn, its plumage wet from sheets of spring rain that lashed the parapets like thrown daggers. Jon Snow took the cylinder from its leg himself, for the bird would permit no lesser hands. A testament, he supposed, to the lingering judgment of Bran's unseen gaze. Wax snapped. Parchment unfurled. Ink dark as heartblood spelled tidings heavy enough to slant the floor beneath his boots. Iron-borne longships sighted off the stony shore. For villages burned. Survivors whisper the Reaver's banner is red over black, and I crowned by Kraken. Claims of a new crow's eye risen from the drowned. North in fear, but holding. S. Jon read it twice, then pressed thumb to seal until wax ground into skin. For villages, that was 200 souls at best, and yet each life weighed like a stone in the scales of his decree. Bastardy mattered little to Reavers, salt and steel were the only laws they honored. But the North belonged to its own blood now, and the king it once fostered could not sit idle while Krakens feasted on free folk children. He found Davos below in the chart room, sleeves rolled, graying hair slicked to scalp with sweat and seawater. Aemon stood beside him, turning pages in a salted atlas, lantern stone pulsing faintly at his wrist. More storms? Davos asked at Jon's entrance, then caught the set of his jaw. Worse. Jon spread the letter. The stony shore bleeds. Davos's mouth tightened. I sailed that coast afore the war. Cliffs like boars' tusks. Currents wicked as politics. Hard to land men. Harder to pull them off. Aemon tapped the map. Here, Deep Cove Head. Safe inlet. A healer's lodge once stood above the beach. If we garrison there, we shield the villages north and south. Jon eyed the boy. You'd ride again? Aemon's answer was silence at first, but his gaze steady as the tide. I owe those villagers my craft as you owe them your crown. Jon clapped Davos's shoulder. Fit Black Betha for northern waters. Send ravens to White Harbor, request Manderley's galleys. I'll ride by land with Ghost, Brienne, Arya, and 200 wardens. We make for Deep Cove before the Kraken strike again. And the realm? Davos asked softly. Tyrion rules until we return. Sam keeps the rolls. Sansa guards the North's crown. He turned to Aemon. Ready yourselves. The sea gives cruel wounds. They departed at high tide under sheeting rain, hoofs flinging mud that smelled of salt and heather. Brienne rode thunder, plate mail cloaked in canvas to muffle shine. Arya slipped between column edges like a shadow come loose. Ghost loped ahead, white for streaming water. The wardens wore helms marked by the silver-on-gray dire wolf, stag, no finer livery than waxed leather and grit. Ravens raced their passage. At Bitterbridge, they found Tavern Peak presenting grain to orphaned tables, penance for rebellion. In the rolling reach, fields sprouted seedlings bright as jade. Farmers paused, hats in hand, to watch the silent host pass east of Golden Grove. At dusk the third day, they crossed the neck, teetering atop rotting planks of the causeway while reed boats, punted by crannogmen, guarded their flanks against leechwater and lurking eyes. Mira Reed met them where bog met heath, gifting smoked eel and a pouch of poisoned art newts in case the Kraken grows legs. Her laughter rang like marsh birds. Past Moat Cailin the world widened into wolf-smelling wind. The King's Road north of Torrens Square lay rutted but unbroken. Flurries scolded though suns still fought winter's retreat. They camped beneath sentinel pines, fires hooded, talk spare. In the small hours Jon walked perimeter, rain-damp cloak plastered to mail, and thought how every league carried him deeper into names he once shed. Snow, Bastard, Lord Commander, and yet heavier still was the newest, King, forged in mercy. Ghost trotted at heel and nudged his hand as if to remind him that titles mattered less than tracks shared in the muddied earth. Deep Cove Head appeared at noon on the 12th day, a sickle of shingle beneath towering slate cliffs, waves gnashing like starving dogs. Smoke smudged the horizon in lazy spirals of charred homesteads to the south. Fishing skiffs lolled beached and broken. No iron-borne sails sullied the bay yet, but flotsam told their story, a woman's braided hair still bound by seashell clasp, a carved jalop root doll, chunks of scorched pine too fresh for lichen. Wardens fanned over dunes, bows knocked. Arya vanished inland to scout, Brienne marshaled laborers to drag boats upright for refugees' return. Jon climbed the cliff path to the healer's lodge. Aemon recalled only splintered beams remained, but the stone hearth stood firm. From its crown he could spy the empty sea to west and the stark line of pines to east, each gust white-capping the grass. Aemon set to converting the ruins, tarps for roof, pallets for cots, barrels of boiled snow melt for washing wounds. By sundown, smoke from their cook fires curled reassuringly into gray sky. Scouting parties returned with ragged survivors, fisherfolk gray-faced with terror, half-starved free folk who had fled south when the dead marched years before. One man bore a brand on his chest, a kraken coiled about an eye, the flesh raw where salt had scoured the wound. They came at dawn, he rasped to Jon beside the hearth. Rain hissed on coals. Not Lord Harlaw nor Greyjoy. They called him the Ion Blinking. Wore a helm of red iron, one gem set where the socket should be. He laughed when we begged, said he'd carve vengeance on the Wolf King for stealing bastards from his blades. The man coughed, spat pink. They took my boy. Jon's fist closed around nothing but damp air. We will bring him back, he vowed, though the gale that whistled through rafters mocked certainty. Night draped the cliffs in velvet louder than bells. Jon walked among slumbering refugees, ghosts slinking mere shadows away. He climbed an outcrop above the surf where the full moon revealed black water restless with secrets. There he found Arya, knees drawn, cloak whipping, her silhouette so like a wraith of his childhood that his breath snagged. Tracks in the pinewood, she said without turning. Ironborn boots, heavy with loot. Moving north along goat paths. 50 at most, but they dragged chain cages. Children, Jon guessed. Or worse. She tilted head, listening to waves. Brienne's assembling pursuit. We leave before dawn. You'll run on ahead, Jon said. As always. She smiled thinly, moonlight caught the curve but not the warmth. Try to keep up, your grace. He almost laughed. You still call me that like it's a joke. It is. She rose. All chairs are wooden jokes. Swords are truth. She patted Needle. Stay alive. I want to see if your laws can tame krakens. Wind swallowed her footfalls. Ghost stared after her. Then at Jon, crimson irises reflecting moon shards, as if asking what truths he trusted. Dawn sluiced silver across treetops when the pursuit column slipped from Deep Cove. Arya and a dozen scout riders raced ahead. Brienne led main body. Jon rode central with Aemon and the healer's wagon. They wound through birch stands carpeted in pale spring flowers whose names he no longer knew. Sparrow calls flitted overhead, unnatural sweet in a land frightened silent. By midday they came upon the first atrocity. A holt where 9 bodies swung from pines, guts spilled to bait carrion. Bastards each, marked by blue ribbons still tied about stiff wrists, symbols of Jon's decree. Some ribbons the reavers had set afire, a mockery of burning standards. Aemon choked, knuckles white on reins. Jon dismounted, cutting corpses down one by one, laying them among anemones. He whispered the words of the night's watch over them, though they had never sworn black. And now their watch is ended. Ghosts sat beside the bodies, head bowed. Wardens lowered torches to burn the remains, smoke spiraling with thunderhead promise. Grief hardened into iron beneath Jon's ribs. He rode without speaking, the rain returning as cold needles. Toward dusk, spies returned. Ironborn camped 2 leagues ahead, nestled in a granite cleft by the sea. 50 men, a dozen captives, longships grounded below with tides receding until night. Jon summoned captains amid dripping ferns. 2-pronged strike, Brienne advised. I take 15 upslope, form wall across the only landward exit. You with Arya free the cages from the beach. Ghost runs distraction. Kill their leader, Arya added. No song without a drummer. Jon met their eyes. No quarter for raiders who've slain children, but spare any who yield. Brienne nodded, Arya shrugged. They moved as twilight bled purple. Ghosts slunk into boulders first, snarls echoing like cave bears. Panic rose within camp. Reavers spilled ale as White Wolf burst from shade, hamstringing 2 before vanishing. Horns blared. The eye unblinking emerged, helm glowing ember red in firelight. He bellowed orders in rough sing-song. Atop cliff lip, Brienne's line advanced shields locked. Lightning flash revealed her golden hair loose beneath drenched hood. Oathkeeper lifted. Arrows hissed down, fletched black and silver. Ironborn cursed as shafts found gaps. Jon, Arya, and 9 wardens crawled seabound. Rain slicked stone. Smell of tar and old fish heavy. Cages squatted near surf, children within, a dozen wraith-like shapes. Arya slipped keys from dead guard with hardly a breath. Lock pins whispered open. Jon herded captives to shallows where Aemon waited, guiding them to Healer's skiff. But the eye unblinking sensed vengeance slipping. He charged through melee, great axe roaring. Lightning lit his helm. One socket a ruby, the other empty pit like fate's vacancy. He swung at Jon with tide behind him. Jon parried, blade sparking. Axe battered his guard, numbness crawled up his shoulder. Ghost lunged, teeth clamping calf, the reaver howled, booting Wolf aside. A slash grazed Jon's breastplate, ringing ribs. Then Arya was there, needle darting, flicker of silver. The eye laughed, pivoted, axe raised. Arya ducked fluid, carving tendon behind knee. His leg folded. Jon drove longsword through the red helm's empty socket, pinning gemstone eye into skull. Silence fell but for rain. Ireborn morale broke, many flung axes and knelt. Brienne strode among them like winter justice, shackling wrists with her own belt leather. Jon sagged against boulder, ghost-licking rain from his gauntlet. Aemon approached, lanternstone crimson in reflections of corpse fire, and knelt over the eye unblinking. Name carved in madness, he murmured. Euron's bastard left in Pike's dungeons. He chose terror to earn a crown. The boy closed the dead's eyelids, one reel, one gem, then looked at Jon. Terror fell tonight. Jon wiped blade on cloak hem. Terror always rises again somewhere. He sheathed. But so will we. They tarried 3 days at Deep Cove, burying dead from both sides, mending nets, repairing skiffs for returning villagers. News of their victory sailed south on gullwings. The Wolf King had broken the Kraken's claw, saved bastard children, and taken the Red Helm as prize. Fisherives sang ballads by driftwood fires, verses of a dire wolf dancing with ghosts of storm. When Black Betha arrived, Davos brought letters. One carried Sunspear seal, Lady Nemella praised their mercy but begged haste, Valentine envoys courted Dorne, promising trade if the realm would rescind its decree and reinstate slave routes only for foreign flesh. Another missive bore Tyrion's cramped script, a faction within Old Town's citadel petition to codify bastardy repeal into Maester's overarching doctrine. Vote imminent, but conservative archmasters rallied opposition. Jon folded pages like origami of troubles. Storm's end grows farther each peril, he told Brienne on deck, gaze on frothing wake. Yet the throne room remains inside me wherever I stand. Brienne smiled, rare and soft. A throne needn't be comfortable. Only steady. He wondered if she spoke of chairs or hearts. They made White Harbor in 8 days, sails fat with following wind. Lord Wyman Manderley welcomed them upon ramparts, slimmer than years past, yet eyes bright. He hosted a feast of salt-crusted haddock and lemon cakes dyed dire wolf gray. Refugee children, now clean and fed, performed a rough play of heroes, Arya masked in cloth of silver, Jon by a stable boy wielding broomstick crown. Laughter lifted rafters. Late that night, Jon walked the banks of the White Knife. Snowflakes drifted lazy about lantern glow, spring, it seemed, wore winter's ghost for a cloak these nights. He heard wheels crunching on gravel, Bran's chair emerging from darkness as if dream summoned. Podrick pushed, then vanished into shadow like a chapter turning. Brother, Bran greeted, voiced the hush of falling snow on dead leaves. For victories, yet the fifth casts its die. Jon inhaled cold that tasted of foreboding. Old Town's vote? Older than votes. Bran's pale eyes reflected river starbursts. The pact of truth approaches reckon. A blade unseen, born of gratitude you sowed. Jon remembered the blind prophet's warning. Tell me where to look. Within, Bran said simply. Beware the hand that clasps yours too tight. Before Jon could question more, the wind gusted and Bran was gone, or never there, only wheel tracks etched then filled with falling white. Morning ravens brought dual invitations, one literal. A lordling of House Florin, angered by loss of male preference inheritance, challenged Jon's decree before the gods by single combat. Tradition bound the king to name a champion or fight himself. Brienne offered at once, fist on breast. Arya volunteered, grin wolfish, Davos muttered none of this nonsense would mend nets. Jon accepted personally, for if the king's own blade would not shield the law, no decree of ink and wax could. They met on Merman's court ice garden, Florent in gilded plate, Jon in plain mail. Snow fell thick as feathers. The Florent knight gave long speech about bastard arrogance, Jon said nothing. They crossed swords. Quick parries became dance, ice cracked beneath boots. Jon feinted high, slid low across frost, swept Florent's legs. The man fell, helm clanging, Jon's point at his throat stilled insult. Florent conceded, no blood spilled. Witnesses many of bastard birth cheered. The law stood taller. That evening, Sam announced the Citadel vote. By narrow margin, Archmasters ratified a revised doctrine naming legitimacy universal at birth, contingent only on royal registration. The decree would ripple beyond Westeros across Essos, vessels already haggled for translation. The dream edged toward permanence. Yet Tyrion's raven, arriving same hour, soured mead in cups. The Iron Bank offered the crown a staggering loan on generous terms, provided foreign bastard laborers be contracted for reconstruction. Contracts all but indenture. A velvet noose. Tyrion sought direction. Jon stared long at ledger figures glinting firelight. "We refuse." Tyrion's answer by swift raven 2 days later was brief. Refusal delivered. Bank politely smiled, then called your debts due 5 years early. War of coin begun. Storm's End loomed again after a month gone. Banners lifted in sea wind, markets ringing with smith hammers. Jon dismounted into clamor of petitioners. Among first to greet him, Tyrion with bloodshot eyes and scroll stack. "Welcome home," he drawled. "We're solvent if you define solvent as not entirely devoured." The bank froze reach credit lines, but Dorne offers collateral if we formalize spice tariffs. Also, the High Septon caught fire, metaphorically, when a septa preached that legitimized children might enter the clergy without penance. He wants an audience. Jon rubbed temples. Later. Today we thank survivors. They held a ceremony outside the harbor gate. Freed captives from stepstones knelt to receive parchments granting homesteads on crown lands. Stonemasons at Moon's Gray, Fisher Rights near Cape Wrath, Orchard Rose within Stormland's valleys ravaged by wildfire years before. Eamon personally tied ribbons of dawn-white cloth, new color for freed thralls, around wrists. Lanternstone glowed bright as sunrise. Mid-morning bells pealed thrice, unheralded visitor. Gate wardens parted crowds for a small palanquin borne by 4 robed figures. From its silk curtains stepped a woman of middle years, hair bound in Septa's veil yet trimmed with silver thread. Her eyes were hazel, sharp. "I am Septon Matron Ronell, prioress of the Quiet Sisters," she announced, voice strong. "We attend the dead, yet we serve the living. We wish to commemorate the bastard's decree with a chapel open to all names, unburnt or new-minted." She produced wooden reliquary. Within is the jawbone of Aegon the Unworthy, father of great bastards. Let his dishonest bones witness honest change. Murmurs rippled. Tyrion hissed low, such a relic carried weight and risk. Jon accepted with bowed head. Let the chapel rise, but his jaw will rest beneath altar stone, silent while truth is spoken above. Ronell's lips twitched, approval or challenge he could not say. She knelt, offered tiny iron key. Open when ready to hear him. That night Jon set box upon map table in candle glow. Arya eyed it askance. "I could sink it in the sea." "History sinks slower than stone," Jon said. He placed key on lid, left box sealed. Summer heat arrived swift, rolling thunderheads along Dornish marches. Tyrion negotiated spice contract deferments. Brienne supervised construction of warden outposts along Gold Road. Davos prepared grain fleets for autumn. Jon spent mornings in Lantern Hall reviewing new census lines, names once hidden now inked proud. At midday he sparred with Asha Greyjoy, who arrived seeking salvage rights for Ironborn turning honest. At dusk he sat with Aemon upon Windy Merlin discussing ways to purify well water with sand layers and crushed oyster shell. Progress felt real until the blade Bran foretold struck. It came at high noon in the small council chamber. Jon sat signing timber grants when Gendry burst in, face ashen. "Sam," he panted. "Maester attacked." They raced to Lantern Hall. Books lay scattered, parchment overturned. Sam knelt bleeding from temple, ghost pepper salve pressed by Aemon. Nearby, the reliquary gaped open, jawbone gone. A scroll remained in its place, ink fresh and spidery. Gratitude shackles the unworthy. The father sins birth sons of wrath. Blood demands penance. At moon's zenith, the Wolf King answers before bone and flame. No signature, but wax-dripped crimson. Jon's gut nodded. "Who?" Sam winced. "Robed sisters. Thought they brought more relics. One struck me. They fled through postern. Are you cursed? Quiet sisters rarely so noisy. Someone borrowed their habits." Jon lifted scroll. Bran's warning, the hand that clasps too tight. They'd let Ronell within walls, welcomed her bones. Gratitude's blade. He summoned guards. Lock gates. Brienne, quarter ever. Why storeroom? Davos, ready harbor patrols. Arya, trail them. He faced Aemon. We recover that bone or see fortress burn. Night fell heavy. Storm's End torches glimmered like foxfire. Scouts returned, no trace beyond Sea Gate, small fishing yawl missing. Arya found robes near breakwater, blood flecks on sand, one thief wounded. Meanwhile, Septon-Matron Ronell swore innocence, weeping that relic guardians vanished days prior. Tyrion paced council table. Symbolic theft. Aegon's jaw once spurred rebellions, the Blackfire Wars. Whoever holds it can claim bastard flag under ancient grievance. Jon's handfist nodded. Blackfire line extinct. Extinction breeds imposters. Tyrion poured wine, didn't drink. Perhaps Iron Bank's leverage. A false heir to fracture your decree. Brienne entered, water-sodden. Cove search found dinghy pieces. Thieves took larger vessel. Jon stared seaward. Where would they sail with Bone? Aemon answered, voice hushed, north. To raise ghosts. Silence fell. The boy's eyes reflected lanternstone glow. I read legends, Aegon's joy used by sorcerers of Ibn to divine bloodlines, burn bone dust, breathe smoke, see rightful heirs. If zealots seek to prove your decree affront, they might summon visions, ignite rebellion. Where? Jon demanded. In the Isle of Faces, Aemon whispered. Heart trees remember all blood. Bone ash in their leaves could conjure half-truth portents. Bran's pact of truth. Jon's chest iced. We ride tonight. Brienne protested supply, Tyrion argued risk, Davos offered ships. Jon chose speed, 10 riders, Ghost, Arya, Aemon. They galloped north at moonrise, never slowing though horses heaved. Days blurred in thunderstorm flashes. At Maidenpool they took river barges, mists clung like prophecy. Green Fork estuary mirrored dawn when they sighted Isle of Faces, Still Lake, Weirwood sentinels white and red as flayed flesh. Their skiffs crunched reeds. Silence thick as fungus-cloaked shoreline. They followed candle marks carved in bark, ghostly luminescence guiding deeper. Ghost snarled low. Smoke ribboned among roots ahead, bone dust, acrid. Jon signaled. Arya slid into gloom. Brienne drew steel, Aemon clutched lanternstone turned dark. Beyond, a clearing ringed in heart trees bled. Robed figures knelt chanting, at center, crude pyre burned jawbone shards, sparks spiraling into canopy. A man in ragged Septon garb recited, blood unpaid cries out. He lifted black-bladed dagger, poised above silver basin where his own palm dripped offerings. Jon stepped forth, sword naked. Enough. Figures whirled. Daggers, rusted axes flashed. Brienne crashed shield first, scattering zealots. Arya zipped, hamstring here, throat there. Jon confronted the preacher, recognized him, the blind prophetess's attendant, now eyes manic. You crown bastards, but their father's sins yet live, he raved, brandishing firebrand. Bones will show the vision, wolves devouring dragons. Jon parried. Let the dead rest. Never. The unjust lie must, he lunged. Jon sidestepped, hilt pommel cracked temple. Zealot crumpled. Aemon rushed to douse pyre with lake water, hiss of steam and bone splinters. But smoke already coiled among boughs, shaping phantom faces, a wolf crowned in flame, a dragon bleeding stars. Ghost howled, trees grown like old men. A gust snuffed flames, smoke dissolved. Aemon's lanternstone reignited bright white, pulses racing heartbeats. Illusion, he breathed. No true vision. Jon surveyed fallen zealots. Some dead, some moaning. The relic jaw shattered beyond use. He felt neither triumph nor grief, only the weight of forest eyes. A path parted in heart tree roots. Bran's voice, yet not heard, guided Jon deeper. At a moss-wreathed pool he knelt, saw his reflection ripple, king's crown, bastard's eyes. Pact of truth, he whispered. I keep watch for living. The pool stilled, showing dire wolf beside kraken, dragon coiled with stag. All within same mirrored world. When he rose, the weight eased. They returned south weary yet resolved. Tyrion met them with news. Iron Bank amphibian emissary arrived but withdrew lone threat. Unsettled by rumor of heart tree prophecy, naming Jon rightful by both blood and choice. Zealot plot thus backfired. But the faith rumbled, uneasy with heart tree sorcery. High Septon demanded inquiry. Jon addressed faith in September of Storm's End. He carried shattered bone fragments, laid them before altar. Relics abused by fear, he declared. Let faith lift hope, not blades. He decreed sanctuary for quiet sisters and penance labor restoring villages. They would bury dead, not rouse them. High Septon grudgingly blessed. Bastards knelt at rail, rose equals. Months rolled. Harvest bountiful. Roads safe. The Assembly of Hands drafted the Charter of Free Name. Laws codifying property rights, church rights, inheritance, and education. Literacy doubled as traveling scribes taught children to write their new surnames. Eamon founded a college in Tumbleton for alchemy and healing. Ghost chased crows from its rafters. Brienne knighted 3 freed thralls who saved her from wayward boar. Arya sailed west with Nymeria pack, chasing horizons unknown, promising letters. Davos finally accepted lordship of Rainwood to fund orphan fleets. Winter, however, crept again, and with it memories of dead white shadows. Jon ordered refurbishment of Nightfort as bastion school for foundlings, so the wall that once divided might now shelter knowledge. Sansa sent wains of pine and stone. Wildlings volunteered labor, singing songs of the king who gave them names without walls. On the first day of the new year, Jon stood upon Storm's End battlements watching sunrise bleed copper over sea. Ghost leaned warm. Eamon joined, taller now by a hand, silver hair whipping. "The realm heals," the boy said. "And bleeds anew tomorrow," Jon replied, half-smile. "So we stanch again." He nodded, feeling the truth settle like comfortable mail. Below, bells tolled not for war but for wedding. A fisherman's bastard daughter to a former septon's son, first union sanctified under free name. Laughter rose. Jon breathed salt and dawn and distant pine, and in that mingled scent lay the soul of a kingdom stitched from scars. Thrones might topple, bones might burn, but so long as a child could claim both name and hope, the realm would live. He touched Gendry's crown, antler, and fang, then lowered it to breast, not brow, saluting the bright horizon. The Storm King, the Snow Bastard, the wolf-crowned healer, he was all and none, a man in whose shadow new stories grew. And Westeros, tempered by winter, bathed by summer, woke to those stories with eyes unclouded, ready at last to step beyond blood and bastardy toward a dawn of chosen names. The hazy breath of midsummer settled over Storm's End like gauze, softening even the unforgiving lines of its walls. From the highest parapet, Jon Snow traced the languid arc of gulls as they wheeled over a sea smoothed by heat. Sweat dampened his linen collar, yet he wore the new antler and fang circlet anyway. A deliberate choice whenever he walked among small folk or stood visible to the docks. Not vanity, an anchor. The people needed a shape to tether to, and he had learned that shapes mattered less for grandeur than for constancy. Beside him Ghost panted, white tongue lolling, crimson eyes following every distant sail. Below, the harbor thrummed with colors of trade the Stormlands had never known. Sunset orange silk bolts from Karth, lapis bricks from Pentos meant to reface the old brothel quarter, barrels of sweet Myrish perfume couched between crates of Dorne's new cultivar peppers. Most striking were the free name banners, sky blue pennants bearing an open door motif, fluttering from the masts of 24 merchant cogs. Those captains were all of bastard birth, each granted a royal license to ship grain and wool free of many tariffs so long as they sailed under the new flag and hired mixed crews. Tyrion had designed the decree calculating loss against goodwill. Already the projected deficit shrank as bastards' families back home paid fees to apprentice their children on those ships. Progress then. Yet progress moved through Westeros like wind through tall grass, quick to bend stalks but just as quick to provoke unseen serpents. Jon's thoughts drifted to the Isle of Faces, to the smoke-borne vision that had nearly rekindled a powder keg of legitimacy zealotry. The conspirators languished in cells far below, awaiting trial before a tribunal mixing faith, crown, and free-named justices, a first that already drew both cheers and hissed warnings. The trial would begin in a moon's turn. Its outcome might prove as transformative as any battle. He turned from the sea, descending into the keep's cool arteries. On the stair he met Eamon Waters, grown leaner from daily sparring with the wardens and taller by a finger since spring. The boy carried a basket of amphory sloshing faintly with pale liquid. "For the college," Eamon said by way of greeting. "Silverleaf tincture, some sailors claim it keeps scurvy at bay. I want to examine the claim properly." Jon smiled. "Your curiosity outruns any library we could build you." "There are libraries farther east," Eamon replied, a hint of wistfulness brushing his tone. "In Valisar they speak of scrolls that survived the doom in sealed basalt tubes. One might contain filters lost to plague and flame." "You'd cross the Shadowlands again?" "Someday." He shrugged. "But first I mean to finish the sanitation project at Tumbleton." The mayor replied with drawings for elevated cisterns. "If we cut waste runoff by half, fevers may vanish entirely." Jon touched Eamon's shoulder. "When you sail, it will be as an ambassador of the free name. Bring back knowledge, not war." Eamon's lanternstone, now strung at his throat like a pendant, pulsed once, approving perhaps. He moved on, boots echoing. Jon's path took him toward the council solar, the airy chamber overlooking orchards just beyond the curtain wall. There Tyrion lay sprawled on a velvet chaise, quill wagging between teeth as he annotated parchment. Davos leaned over the table poring over harbor manifests. Brienne stood near the latticed window, arms folded across cobalt breastplate, Oathkeeper belted in a new storm-gray scabbard. At her side, a cadet in stag-headed surcoat clutched a leather roll. "I hope those numbers sing sweeter than the gulls," Jon said. Tyrion's eyes flicked up. "They sing in key so long as one applauds with both hands and perhaps a boot." "The free name flotilla has doubled inbound spice tonnage, which is lovely, but the Arbor wants repayment for last winter's seed corn early since the Iron Bank's clause tightened." He tapped his quill. "Regrettably, we cannot mint silver from seagull droppings, no matter what alchemists claim." Davos straightened. "But we've a solution." "My lord hand." Tyrion sighed theatrically, then gestured to the cadet. The boy unrolled vellum to reveal a map of the Stepstones archipelago. Several islets were circled in red. "Sol Silver," Tyrion announced. "An Associ consortium discovered veins of argentiferous ore half a mile beneath Cairn Reef. They lacked the engineering nous to shaft down without the caverns collapsing into seawater. But your wardens include miners of crownlands and free folk. If we send an expedition, claim the islet via the free name charter, we secure a revenue stream that bypasses both Bank and Arbor." Brienne pursed her lips. "The Stepstones breed pirates like fleas. Our last raid cleared the worst of them, but word seeps. They will swarm again if silver beckons. Which is why I propose a joint venture," Tyrion said, tapping the map. "Dorne, the Stormlands, and the Free Name Merchant League each hold a third share. Dorne's triremes guard the shipping lanes. They hate the Iron Bank's slavery proxies as much as we do. The Merchant League invests labor and risk. We invest siege engineers and a token garrison. Profits divided and minted here under new standards that place your banner on every silver stag." Jon studied the map, then the number columns. It was bold, bordering on reckless. Yet he saw Davos's steady nod, Brienne's cautious approval. "Draw the charter," he ordered. "But first send Arya." He looked to Brienne. "She returned from the west?" "Docked last night," Brienne confirmed. "She brings news. I should let her speak it." As if summoned by name, Arya slipped inside, travel-worn and rain-speckled. She smelled faintly of pine tar and long storms. Needle rode at her hip. She offered a half-bow. "Brother, Lord Hand, Ser Davos." "Brienne." Tyrion perched. "Did you find the edge of the world?" "Found its curve," she replied. "And 3 dead sailors who claimed they sailed clean off it and circled around. But that's not what matters." She reached into a pouch, withdrew a shard of obsidian the length of Jon's finger. Green as deep sea, edges so keen they left wind bleeding. "I bought this from a summer islander in the ruins of Andalos. He said it was chiseled from the skull of a sleeping volcano in the Basilisk Isles. Not remarkable, dragonglass everywhere these days. But look." She scratched the flat with her thumbnail. The stone's core glimmered swirling gold, like living fire beneath mirrored water. "I've never seen a lode like it." The islander swore it sings near heat. "Hum you can feel in bone." Jon took the shard cautiously. The moment his fingers closed, a faint vibration traveled up wrist to shoulder, like standing at the heart of distant thunder. Ghost's ears flattened. "Dragonglass is abundant," Davos said. "But a singing sort?" Tyrion's brows rose. "That could fetch a ransom from dwarfs in Old Town. Pardon the expression, who suspect resonance can drive automantia. Or it might serve priests." Arya shook her head. "The merchant also said sailors along the Basilisk coast saw blue eyes shimmering in jungle night again. Not whites, something else." He wouldn't elaborate. A hush settled. Jon met Brienne's gaze. Memories of Hardhome and the long night etched in both. "Far south," he murmured, "where winter never came. Could the cold shadows migrate? Or be born anew?" Tyrion whispered. Davos exhaled like a punctured sail. "We barely survived the last coming. If the dead seed elsewhere, silver mines won't matter." Jon weighed the shard. The hum grew faint then hushed. "We send envoys to the Summer Isles, the Stepstones, even Sithorios if need be. Discreet, armed with lanternstone and dragonglass. Not to wage war yet. To witness." "I'll go," Arya said instantly. No, Jon countered, gentle but firm. You've ridden leagues beyond reason already. I need someone the Basilisk Corsairs have never scented. Gendry knows hull and tide. Let him lead. Arya opened her mouth to protest, then relented. He'll need shadows at his back. The Night's Watch used to have rangers skilled at that. We'll ask. Jon set the shard upon parchment. We will not let new darkness root. The council dispersed soon after. Tyrion to draft silver charters, Davos to collate ship logs, Brienne to drill garrison volunteers. Arya wandered toward the training yard where free folk spearwomen sparred. Jon lingered, eyeing the humming obsidian until its throb matched his own pulse. He slipped it into a leather wrap, tucked it behind his belt. 2 days later, the capital awoke to thunder before dawn. Hoofbeats pounding, horns clamoring along the old Targe road. Jon dressed with ghostly speed and reached the gatehouse as riders clattered across drawbridge. Their surcoats bore the flayed man on pink, Bolton, but with a diagonal crimson line slashed through the sigil. At their head rode Lady Barbary Dustin, gaunt features sharpened by urgency. Mud clotted her hems, and a cut on her cheek still wept. Sel's words swarmed the bar Rollins, she gasped, dismounting. Mercenaries sworn to one called the Ragged Heiress. She claims descent from Domeric Bolton by a miller's girl. They torch villages that refuse her standard. She thrust a blood-splashed scroll. She means to reclaim the Dreadfort under banner of your decree. If bastards are legitimate, she says, then the Boltons rise anew. Jon's stomach sank. How many ride with her? Perhaps 600, Barbary answered. More gather, lured by spoils. My riders held them at Heartwood Hall but cannot withstand. They style themselves the Scourge of Snow, mocking your name. Davos grimaced. If the Bar Rollins burns, the shivering forest falls next. Then Deepwood. The north will bleed again. Jon closed his eyes a heartbeat. He had expected misuses of the new law, but not so soon nor so brutal. She perverts what we built, he said quietly. We stop her, but not with slaughter alone. We reveal her fraud. Tyrion arrived, having heard commotion. You'll need proof Domeric never fathered her. The maesters hold birth rolls, but thieves may doubt parchment. Then we ride with truth embodied. Jon looked to Eamon, who had entered unnoticed, healer's satchel over shoulder. Your lanternstone flares at lie. If it answers her blood differently than ours, the north will see. Eamon nodded, though trepidation flickered. I'll test her. His voice steadier than his age. Brienne volunteered command of the main force. Davos would ferry supplies. Arya, though displeased at staying, offered spies among Bolton's sympathizers. Jon accepted all. Ghost sensed the resolve, paused dancing. Jon bent, forehead to white fur. One war at a time. He rose, and the king's host assembled once more. The march north carved through summerlit valleys sweet with heather and buzzing midges. Yet each mile deeper chilled the air as though memory of Bolton cruelty seeped from soil. Burnt cottages stood black against fields of swaying barley not yet harvested, an omen of hunger if war trampled further. Near Heartwood they met refugees huddled in a half-collapsed sept. Old men, nursing mothers, boys in patched pants carrying scythes as weapons. They spoke of the Ragged Heiress, how she wore a cloak of flayed skins, claimed the Mistborn had right to scour the proud. She executed petty lords by nailing tongues to gateposts for speaking slurs. Jon felt a bitter twist. Mercy perverted. Bastardy inverted into terror. They pressed on. Scouts reported the Scourge encamped along the banks of Fever River, siege engines improvised from lumber mill wheels. Jon summoned his captains beneath a lightning-split elm. The plan: Davos's archers to harry from South Bank, Brienne to anchor left with spear wall, Jon to parley before battle, lanternstone in hand. Dawn broke bruised purple. The field lay churned mud and dew-jeweled grass. The Ragged Heiress rode forth under ragged banners of flayed men, her armor mismatched steel plates riveted to boiled leather painted red. Her hair black braided with finger bones whipped in wind. She bore a flail whose chain ended not in spiked ball but in a shrunken human hand clenched around a cleaver. She halted 10 paces from Jon. Eyes emerald, bright with mania. Snow King, she called, voice raw yet vibrant. Do your laws tremble when confronted with truth soaked in blood? Jon's horse snorted. He raised the lanternstone. It glowed neutral white. You claim Domeric Bolton's seed. Submit to blood test. If stone flares, the north will yield. If not, you disband. The heiress laughed. Tricks of glass. I answer with steel. She lifted flail, swung overhead. The severed hand blurred, cleaver glinting. Jon remained. Refuse, And your men die for a lie. Men die always, she spat. Better for cause than swine trough. You freed bastards, but you kept castles from them. We take. Purse rippled among her ranks. Doubt. Jon sensed it. He unclipped cloak clasp, exposing plain shirt. Strike if you must. I hold no shield. Let truth decide. She hesitated, a flicker beyond rage. In that beat, Arya emerged behind her, silent as dawn itself, steel-pricked kidney. Yield, Arya hissed, or bleed like your cloak. The heiress shrieked, spinning, flail lashing. Arya ducked, slashed calf tendon. The heiress toppled, mud spraying. Brienne's arrows whistled overhead into sky, a signal. Warden's advanced shields locked, Sel's words faltered. Jon dismounted, approached the fallen claimant as she writhed. He knelt, lanternstone hovering. It pulsed dull gray, no true blood to test. He stood, raising stone high. A lie, he shouted. She is no Bolton, only carnage given tongue. Sel's words exchanged glances. Some threw arms, others fled. A few fanatics charged, but Brienne's line held firm. Battle ended before it began, casualty light. Jon gazed at the ragged heiress, now bound. Mud clung to her streaked face, her eyes swam wild. Why, he asked. She spat mud. Because your law favors weak. Fear of old names kept us in pen. Bastardy now stands equal, but where's our piece of stone? You feed us hope, then lock doors behind. Jon said nothing because part of him saw the unvarnished edge of her grievance. He ordered her taken alive. She will face tribunal, he told his army, so her words weigh on the scales with ours. That evening campfires flickered along Fever River. Jon attended wounded, Eamon stitched a boy who fought for the heiress only to earn a place at Harthall's forge. Lanternstone glowed warm each time Eamon's reassuring words banished the boy's shaking. Nearby Lady Barbary Dustin distributed bread and salt to freed Sel's words who chose service in her host to rebuild what they'd helped ruin. Later Jon walked beneath a sky jeweled with summer stars. Arya waited at the tree-lean cleaning needle. She had spirit, Arya said. Could have joined the new order if pride hadn't poisoned it. Pride and pain, Jon replied. We must do more than decree. We must place land in honest hands, teach craft, widen the council benches. She smirked. You're building a bigger table, with seats enough that none will claw for scraps. He glanced toward distant fires. Will you stay to help carve it? Her eyes shimmered. For a time, but horizons call. Once the stepstones venture sails, I'll ride wind with wolves again. He laid a hand atop hers, rough glove to glove. Then ride, carry our story. Speak truth where darkness whispers. She squeezed his fingers, then vanished like smoke. The ride home carried trophies unwanted. The broken flail, the heiress's cloak. Flayed skins cleansed and ready for pyre, rolled tightly. Yet it also carried first seeds of deeper reform. On the march, Jon convened a provisional council of small folk volunteers and lesser lords, empowering them to survey abandoned Bolton lands and parcel out tracts no larger than a family could farm, grant titles of warden yeoman to those who held them. The promise electrified destitute soldiers. They saw future in plowshares. Barbary Dustin pledged oversight, pledging her castle's vaulted grain stores for lean winters. Back at Storm's End, the tribunal opened. In the Grand Bailey, benches rose in concentric arc, the faith's purples, the crown's blues, free names greens. The accused, the ragged heiress, her robed zealot co-conspirators, the false sisters, stood in chains before all. Jon presided but did not judge. Judgment fell to the mixed panel. Testimony spooled over days. The heiress spoke of childhood in dread fort kennels, how soldier fathers defiled her mother, how lordly bastards beat her for sport. She claimed she'd glimpsed Dom Eric Bolton in secret visits, believed herself his sister by half-blood. Yet Archmesters presented cycle scrolls proving Dom Eric in King's Landing the night of conception. Lanternstone glimmered dim near her, bright near Jon, proof enough. Still, many in crowd heard her cry, equality without equity is chain repainted. When verdict came, guilty of murder, treason, but with sentence commuted from death to life at hard labor building northern roads, the gallery murmured disquiet. Harsh yet merciful, dissatisfying to extremes. Jon accepted the discord. Governance thrived less on applause than on restless engagement. To address the equity hue, he unveiled the Land Stewardship Act drafted on route. Tracts to veterans, microloans to start smithies, guilds open to all names, north and south. Tyrion had wrung funding from silver charters and stepped up Myrish spice tariffs. Sam's census would select regions with highest displacement. The act passed the assembly by near-unanimous voice, though reached Lord's gritted teeth. Summer waned. Gendry's expedition sailed, 3 carracks, a Drummond, and a swift sloop named Swiftwolf captained by an eager young woman of Lys who wore blue ribbon to claim her father's name once denied. Brienne accompanied as envoy, Davos directed harbor departure, lanterns glinting. When the fleet vanished into dawn mist, Jon felt weight shift as though the realm's heart, once bound to old ports, now beat toward uncharted tide. With Arya guiding spies in Dorne and the North rebuilding, Jon finally journeyed to the Wall. He rode light, Ghost at side, Aemon along for study. They found the night fort transformed, scaffolds bristling, raven rookery humming, wildling children chasing goats across cobblestones newly relayed. The old weeping rat cook's kitchen had become a classroom where a Bravosi instructor taught letters alongside spear drills. In the courtyard stood a statue incomplete. A direwolf with antlers carved from blackwood, front paw extended to lift a kneeling child. When Jon passed, hammers paused, every eye watched, hopeful. He spoke to them beneath the aurora glimmering faint though summer, the wall behind us once separated realms. Now it shields possibility. You are not bastards, you are founders. This keep shall hold no vows of celibacy or service until death, only vows to truth, knowledge, and shared defense. He named the institution the Snowlight Conclave, a nod, someone would later say, to both Snow's illumination and the conclave of maesters. That night he and Aemon climbed the wall's remains to watch polar lights smear green rivers above. Aemon asked whether he feared the distant blue-eyed rumors, the dragoglass hum. I fear losing the lesson, Jon said. That light and dark war inside every decree. But I also trust people to choose light if given sight and name. Aemon tucked lanternstone into pocket, its pulse steady. Then we watch. Below, new bells rang, melted from reaver axeheads cast in Castleforge, marking hour a final lesson. Children giggled through corridors. Jon closed eyes, breathing cold so pure it stung, and felt the realm's pulse, uneven, imperfect, alive. Autumn's first gale greeted them on descent from Frostfangs. Ravens brought word, the Stepstone's mine yielded first nugget, rich, yet also rumors that Corsair remnants sought alliance with Valentin's slave priests again. Brienne signaled readiness, Gendry confirmed structural stability, one warden lost to cave-in, ceremony planned. Closer to home, Maester Sam wrote triumph, the land stewardship grants passed muster in Old Town's ledgers. But also caution, archmesters argued over new field of socio-history, some claiming Jon's reforms threatened centuries of scholarship. Sam feared censure. Jon penned reply, scholarship that fears truth is footnote to tyranny. He enclosed funds for Sam's Lantern Hall Chairs endowment. Tyrion, in follow-up, reported Ironbank's emissaries returned, this time praising Stepstone's venture, seeking stake. Jon rejected politely but offered to honor outstanding debt via silver shipments within 5 years rather than 7. The bank accepted, their smile tight. Through all, letters from Sansa in Winterfell wove bright thread, harvest abundant, Wolfswood reforestation blossoming. Rickon glimpsed near Skagos' southern cape, possibly alive, search parties assembled. The North's Parliament of Clan Chiefs had ratified the free name as law equal to First Men's tradition. In the capital, Free Name Day approached, anniversary of decree. Jon decreed Festival of Lanterns. On eve, children of every house and none released paper globes across bay, thousands ascended, fireflies of silk and wax, each bearing name newly inscribed. Jon stood with Tyrion atop curtain wall, watching luminous swarm reflect in sea. In Bravos they speak of this law as miracle, Tyrion mused. Yet some call it contagion, they fear their debts vanish if bastardy dissolves noble lines. Jon smiled. Contagion of dignity. She's relentless, the dwarf said with grin. Let it spread. Laughter drifted, mingled with lantern songs. As the final lantern rose, painted with a dire wolf nursing a kraken pup, a hush stole through crowd. A boy tugged Jon's sleeve, perhaps 6, hair white gold like faint memory of Targaryen fire. Is it true even shadows get names now? The child asked, lisping. Yes, Jon answered, kneeling. Shadows and stars alike. I want mine to be Storm, the boy declared. Then Storm it is. Jon tied blue ribbon on the child's wrist himself. Lantern light painted them gold. Tyrion wiped an eye claiming wind. Winter came quietly at last, frost etching ramparts, breath ghosting before dawn. The realm, though still scarred, strove. Mines yielded silver, roads knit, septons preached acceptance more often than condemnation. Yet rumors still drifted. Of blue eyes gleaming in deep jungles, of a redstone obelisk unearthing north of ET humming like Aemon's shard, of Ireborn rebels plotting new raider queen. Jon met each missive with patience and measured wrath. He dispatched envoys, scribes, knights, healers. He invited dissenters to council halls, listened. He found allies in unexpected places, a blind bard in Lannisport who composed ballads of the heiress trial that humanized her pain, a one-armed baker of Bastard Town converting a storehouse into free school, even Lord Paxter Morrigan, once obstinate, who now funded libraries in his castles after seeing pledged sons succeed in free name fleets. One clear ice night Jon sat alone before hearth, reading personal letters, Sansa's about Rickon's sightings, Gendry's from mine, Arya's from coast of Sithorios describing ebon gorillas and strangers who whispered of the singing glass. His eyes grew weary. He dozed it, and dreamed of the weirwood pool again. Bran stood across water, raven swirling. The wheel turns, brother, he said, voice echoing leaves. Some will always seek to chain. Yet you forged of broken oaths, wield key of names. Guard it or shadows roam. Jon asked, is the dream of equality enough? The dream is seed. The rest is seasons. Bran smiled faintly, snow on lashes. Winter fosters spring. Jon woke before embers. Ghost lay curled warm. Outside, bells tolled newborn hour. He rose, poured ink, began drafting a proclamation for next dawn, a charter of universal education funded by Stepstone's silver, overseen by maesters, open to all children by age 7. No castle, no farm, no fisher's hut exempt. Quill scratched, candle flickered, and a kingdom breathed onward. Years would pass before some would call this season the bright interregnum, the span between dead nations and new confederation of banners. Minstrels would sing of Jon Snow, the Wolf King who legitimized the lands forgotten. Scholars would debate whether his decrees birthed a golden age or merely postponed the next darkness. But in the moment, within winter's hush, parchment still drying, the future remained unseen, malleable, alive. It existed in every stroke of ink, every child's chosen surname, every miner's lantern descending silver veins, every sailor testing the horizon's curve, every whisper of glass that sang with promise, every dire wolf footstep across fresh snow. And so the story continued, not in grand battles alone but in the quiet courage of daily truth, a baker teaching letters, a maester healing plague, a smith forging crown and plow alike, a king rising at first light to greet fishermen by name. No subtitles marked chapters. Only hearts beating, winter thawing, names spoken, and a realm forged from bastards and broken dreams learning to become whole. The first teeth of winter nipped the stormlands before the harvest wagons were all secured, slipping thin webs of rime across orchard boughs that still bent under fruit. Jon Snow walked the ridge road above the eastern orchards at dawn, mist pooling like breath around his boots, and tried to judge whether the hard frosts would bite deeper than usual this year. Across the fields, farmers hefted lanterns between rows, picking the last of the late-ripening fire apples. Each lantern shivered in the haze, scattered stars mirroring the cold pale constellations fading overhead. In those frail lights, Jon felt the realm's pulse, quiet, unsure, but alive, pressing forward despite rumor and threat. When he returned to the keep, the night's ravens were waiting in the rookery. The first bore the seal of the Stepstone's charter. Tyrion's terse script read, Silver Vein Stable. First bar ingots finished. Corsairs sighted shadowing our convoy, but Brienne's fleet turned them off. Gendry requests more master smelters or richer than expected. Also brings talk of deep song stone echoing through caverns. Miners swear they hear harps beneath their feet. The second message from Sansa in Winterfell sent Jon's pulse thudding harder. Rickon recovered. Found half-feral on Skago's shore, wolf companion twice his size. He shuns keeps but wishes to see you. We march south once weather permits. Bran says the boy carries wild winter in his veins, expect change upon his arrival. Jon closed his eyes a moment. He remembered a child with tumble of brown hair chasing wooden knights across Winterfell's yard. The thought that Rickon had survived wolves and wildlings and exile felt like the stubborn return of some forgotten spring flower pushing through frost-cracked stone. The third raven came from Gendry's flagship, Sea Hammer, but the parchment did not unroll into the master smith's bold strokes. Instead, meticulous Braavosi scrivening declared that a vessel named Candle of the Deep, flying free name colors, had vanished after leaving the mine islet laden with 30 crates of ore. Its last sighting, the channel south of the Basilisk Isles, where jungle storms nightly sparked blue lightning across unseen peaks. Jon tapped the vellum against his lips. Beneath the note, a postscript from Brienne added, locals speak of phantom lights in mangrove shallows, some blame Stonesong, others cold spirits come south. No bodies, no wreckage washed ashore. We hold patrols close. He folded the letters, slipped them into his belt, and descended to the solar. Their Tyrion leaned over charts, eyes rimmed scarlet from sleeplessness, and Davos traced trade routes with a calloused thumb. Sam, gray-frocked, cradled a roll of fresh-inked vellum, while Eamon, hair unbraided and still damp from dawn washing, thumbed the glass of his lantern stone as though it might whisper counsel. Candle of the Deep, Jon began without preamble. We must know if she lies at Reef Bottom or in some Corsair cove, and we will retrieve her crew dead or living. Davos nodded gravely. I can outfit 3 galleys tomorrow, sail by new moon. The Basilisk currents run cruel, but I've steered worse. I sail as healer, Eamon said quietly. And witness. Tyrion coughed. 1 crisis at a time, your grace. We still owe the Iron Bank the first silver shipment due at year's end. Losing 30 crates cripples that promise. Sam unrolled his vellum, a ledger of land grant yields. We can divert grain tariffs to cover half if the harvest holds. His voice carried hesitation. But only if winter stops at first snow. Jon rubbed jaw, feeling stubble rasp beneath glove. Then we pray to every god, old and red. And we send envoys to the Iron Bank with signet-stamped promissory notes. He looked at Tyrion. 2 years extension, no more. Offer Stepstone's profits as collateral. Show them or essays, not rumors. Tyrion's brows rose, but he inclined head. I will sweet-talk those Braavosi quills until they write songs of your solvency. Jon turned to Sam. Prepare wagons for grain convoys north. Our stores are fat, where they spoil they do no one good. The free folk at the night fort can spare timber crews to fell enough for sledges. Winterfell will distribute. Sam smiled, I can manage that, and bustled off, parchment clutched like a talisman against storms. Only Eamon lingered, lanternstone pulsing soft opal tones. The miners call it deep song, he said once others drifted out. They say some shards vibrate in perfect fifth intervals. If our lost cargo contained such pieces and they wound up in wrong hands. Jon thought of the ragged heiress's blood-soaked cloak of zealots burning bone for prophecy. A weapon. Or a beacon. The boy's eyes gleamed with sea-glass worry. Sound shapes memory. If the stone remembers winter, it might call to what birthed winter. Jon laid a hand on his shoulder. We will recover it. And if rumor of northern cold wandering south is true, we meet it on deck, open-eyed. He paused, voice lowering. I will sail with Davos. Your grace, Eamon began. No argument. Jon's tone brokered none. A king hides behind walls only when realm can stand without him. This realm still learns to crawl. They spent the remaining day drafting orders. Tyrion arranged a council of regents, Sansa by Mirrorglass for the north, Sarah Cummer representing Dorne, Lord Manderley for the Reach, Lady Barbary Dustin for the Bar Rowlands, Archer Prince Trystane as voice of the Free City's merchants. To them Jon wrote a final directive, steer steady but let the wind of change fill sails. Should darkness rise within, shine lanterns instead of forging more chains. That night, candlelight haloed Ghost's white fur as Jon packed. He lingered over the carved wolf-stag circlet, debating whether to bear it to sea. Finally, he placed it in oiled cloth and slid it into a simple chest, symbols weighed heavily on water. He buckled his father's sword Longclaw, now sheathed in scabbard tooled with the free name sigil, and beneath shirt strapped the humming shard Arya had found. It rested against his heart, its faint vibration aligning with his pulse. The fleet cast off under a sliver moon that bled bronze. Davos commanded from Black Betha's quarterdeck, sails trimmed to catch a stiff northeast wind. Sea Hammer led as vanguard, 2 newer galleys, Justice of the Dawn and Lantern Bearer, followed. Jon's cabin in Betha rocked with the rhythmic growl of oarbanks, the soft creak of leather straps, the occasional clank of Ghost's claws pacing. Eamon converted the stern gallery to an infirmary, lashed crates of herbs and copper instruments to bulkheads. Lanternstone glowed brighter each degree south they sailed, as if hungering. Jon visited between watches, watching the boy sketch diagrams of wave harmonics and obsidian geometry. Their conversations roved from Rickon's wild wolf to the ethics of naming rights to potential uses of silver for water purification. 3 days out of Shipbreaker Bay, a storm front swallowed the horizon, thunderheads stacking like fortress walls, their underbellies violet, flashing with sheet lightning. Davos ordered reefing of topsails, Jon joined deckhands hauling ropes, hair plastered with spray, delight flickering in marrow, combat of wind and will, purer than council intrigues. As night fell, swells lifted hulls to dizziness. Ghost hunkered against hatch, eyes narrowed, but every so often he raised snout to wind and whined low. Jon thought of the shard vibrating under tunic, it hummed more noticeably now as though the storm itself strummed the stone. In the third watch, the lookout cried, light starboard. Lanterns stabbed through rain 3, maybe 4. Davos peered, spyglass trembling in gale. Could be merchantmen, he said, uncertainty shading words. Lightning forked, illuminating hull silhouettes, sleek, low, with lateen sails furled. Jon's eyes narrowed. Corsairs. At his order, the fleet angled to intercept. Betha's drumbeat cadence 4 oars, Sea Hammer's ballistae swung out. Rain hissed. Another lightning flash, the enemy bore no flag, but a red hand smeared across canvas could be glimpsed, paint running in deluge. Volantine Flamehand. A desperate pursuit ensued. Galleys clawed through wave valleys, every broadside lantern drowned by sheets of rain. Twice Sea Hammer loosed quarrels, splinters blossomed on Corsair stern, but they slipped into squall gloom. Near dawn the storm scattered, leaving only heaving seas and a smear of black wreckage, broken mast, shredded red-hand cloth floating like grim confetti. No bodies, no crates of ore. Davos cursed quietly. Either scuttled or lured us off course. They know these straits like gulls know cliffs. Jon stared at the drifting tatter of red paint. They want the silver and perhaps the deep song stone more than coin. Eamon touched lanternstone, which dimmed slightly as if disappointed. Course correction put them inside the Basilisk archipelago by midday. Rock-green jungle walls shimmered under punishing sun. Water there turned milky turquoise, frothing against knotted mangrove roots. Birds shrieked like humans in death throes. Betha's keel scraped shoal once, Davos swore and ordered sail trimmed again. They anchored off Skull Isle, an atoll shaped like jawbone. Here, the map said, Candle of the Deep had last signaled. Jon led landing party, 12 wardens, Eamon, and Ghost wading through shallows that smelled of sulfur and rotting fruit. Carved totems lined the strand, bleached by salt. Symbols, Eye of Lawler, snake eating the sun, and something new, spiral etched in concentric shards. The forest beyond was a tangle of vines thicker than ship's rope, leaves broad as shields. They hacked a path by steel. Cicadas droned so loud Jon's skull vibrated. Birds with scarlet crests watched them, curiously unafraid. By a stagnant lagoon they found the first sign, a length of free-name sailcloth snagged on a limb, edges charred. Eamon knelt, sniffed. Pitch oil. Ghost bolted ahead, growling. The party hurried after to a clearing where a crude altar of blackened stone jutted. On it lay the candle's missing captain, throat slit, skin coated in shimmering dust that glimmered gold-green. His eyes, wide, were filmed icy blue. Eamon recoiled. The lanternstone flared bright amber. That dust is ground obsidian, deep song maybe. He gently scraped sample into vial. And his eyes, like whites, but faint. Jon touched the corpse's brow. Cold as winter night. No spark of unlife, yet something clung, echo of frost in tropic place. He instructed 2 wardens to carry the body back for burial rites. They pressed deeper. Odd stone markers soon dotted trail, obsidian shards driven upright, each humming faintly, tuned to differing pitches. When wind passed, they sounded a low chord, eerie and almost mournful. The path ended at jagged sea cliff. Down below, surf smashed against rocks where Candle of the Deep lay scuttled, hull broken open, crates spilled. Figures moved among wreckage, thin shapes robed crimson, collecting shards. Overseeing them, a tall woman clad in steel-tinted red, hair shaved save for single braid. Her helm bore the Volantine fiery hand. Jon signaled silence, then stepped from vine cover, voice carrying. That cargo belongs to the free name fleet. In the king's name, stand down. The woman looked up. Her eyes burned amber in shadow of helm. She spoke Westerosi with harsh accent. King of bastards, you come far to guard what you do not fathom. My grasp reaches farther than yours, Jon answered. Release the oar, return prisoners, and sail home free. She laughed, startling a flock of carrion gulls. The hand of the flame answers only to Lawler. These stones sing his truth. With them we forge dawn for chosen. Eamon stepped beside Jon. Lanternstone reacted, glinting bright. The woman's gaze locked on it, hunger naked. She barked sharp order. Red priests drew bows tipped with obsidian arrowheads. Steel hissed as wardens raised shields. Rain started again. Fat drops hiss-popping on hot stone. Ghost crouched, hackles bristling. Do not shed blood here, Jon called. You toy with forces that freeze fire, swallow suns. Then let them swallow, she cried, and loosed a flaming arrow into a crate of ore. The crate detonated, thunderous note like temple gong. Shockwave knocked men to knees. Where dust billowed, air crawled with frost, rhyming leaves white. Another explosion. Frost rippled faster. Red Priest screamed as ice clung to skin, crystallizing flesh. Jon dragged Aemon behind Ridge. They've woken something. The boys' stone stroboscoped violently. Wardens regrouped, hurling grappling hooks down cliff, sliding to shoreline under barrage of rubble. Jon led charge, Longclaw cleaving priest who attempted another ignition. Aemon darted through chaos, sprinkling vinegar to damp or Ghost lunged at the armored hand, but her blade sparked, clipping his flank. Jon roared, parried her next blow. Their duel crashed against tide. She moved with mad fervor, blade glowing red-hot. Each parry sent jolt up his arm, yet her frenzy lacked guard. Jon feinted, pivoted, slammed pommel to her helm. Metal rung. She staggered. Ghost's jaws closed on gauntlet, ripping away blade. Jon swept leg, pinned her. But behind, one wounded priest thrust torch into final crate. Or shrieked, pitch rose into agonizing whistle. Jon slashed arrow, but too late. Crate burst luminous vortex, releasing plume of silver-green powder. Where powder contacted surf, water flash froze, steam curling ghosts. An eddy formed, spiral spinning inward, darkness yawning. In its pupil glimmered blue starlight. Jon felt temperature plummet, breath fogged. Aemon shouted incantation, words old Valyrian, pressing lantern stone into powder's edge. Light burst white. Spiral convulsed, caved in on itself with echoing crack, leaving only silent shardfall. Stillness. Hiss of thaw. Rain resumed, gentler. Jon glanced around. Priests lay dead or fled. Wardens hauled crates onto barges. The hand of the flame knelt bound, helm removed, her braid cut. Fury still danced behind brown eyes. She spat, you delay dawn, but cannot quench flame. Jon studied her. Dawn needs no flame purchased by frost. He ordered her taken for trial. You will answer to living, not shadows. On deck of Black Bethel later, Jon watched while sailors interred candles captain at sea. Ashes cast on tide. The humming shard at his breast had dimmed. Pulse now slow as resting heart. Aemon's sample locked chests thrice barred. They weighed anchor, sails snapping, prow aimed north where stars sharpened in clearing sky. Yet as hull cut foam Jon Snow, King of Westeros, knew frost had tasted tropic air. Cold could crawl anywhere singing stone might call. The war for dawn was not ended, it had only drifted latitudes. White Harbor's beacon greeted them weeks later, and news collided like breakers. Rickon's party camped in Wolfswood, arriving in a fortnight. Stepstone's mine thriving again. Brienne posted new garrison. Iron Bank accepted extension. But Old Town's archmasters now debated banning deep song stone export, citing unnatural properties. Meanwhile, Lady Namella requested summit to discuss joint crusade against Red Priests encroaching on Summersea Isles. Jon's return was therefore not to respite but to swirl of preparations. He held the first winter conclave in Storm's End's Grand Hall, lords, merchants, free-folk chieftains, maesters, healers, all seated in equality. Lanternstone pulsed at table center, reminder of truths deeper than crown. There he recounted basilisk horrors, displayed frost-burned leaf samples. Gasps hissed. His decree, no deep song stone to leave mine unsupervised. We study it under open council or not at all. And we watch the jungles for ice. Tyrion proposed a network of watchtowers from Summer Isles to the Wall, each bearing alarum bells tuned to stone's pitch. We shall call it the Silver Chorus, he quipped. Funding passed by acclamation, fear-sharpened quills. Mid-session, horns announced Sansa and Rickon's arrival. Conversation ceased as the doors opened on flurry of snow-kicked wolf pups chasing a massive dire wolf the color of storm clouds. Rickon followed, broad, wild-haired, ice-fierce yet warm. Behind came Sansa in fur-lined blue, regal. Jon stepped down, brother to brother. Rickon stared, then wrapped arms around him in embrace, crushing his bear. No words needed, years apart melted in shared silent vow. The great dire wolf Shadow Fur, Rickon named him, bowed head to ghost, recognition between pack. The hall exhaled, witnessing reunion. That evening fires roared in every hearth. Musicians played new ballad of Fisher Queen, Bastard King, and Singing Glass. Children danced through aisles, names stitched bright on sleeves. Rickon, still uneasy with walls, lingered outside with wolves but joined feast long enough to tear mutton shanks and tell of Skago's giants helping him cross crevasse. Later, Jon walked ramparts with Sansa. Frost sparked on her lashes. Your realm grows, she said, gaze sweeping lantern-speckled town. But roots tremble. The cold you found elseplace. How do we fight ice that sings? Light, names, books, Jon answered. And steel if we must. Sansa smiled wryly. Steel yet remains foundation. She touched his arm. When doubts gnaw, remember father. He forged justice with hope but carried blade equally. He nodded, memories sliding across heart like warm hand. In sky northward, curtains of green aurora rippled faint though winter not yet deep. As if answering, lantern stone at his chest throbbed gentle. Rickon's shadow fur howled soft below. Jon spoke into cold star air. Let dawn come with song we choose. Snow thickened over weeks, yet roads stayed open. Wardens patrolled, free folk shoveled. The education charter launched. Traveling teachers in goat leather cloaks carrying satchels of slates and chalk. They visited hamlets, teaching letters under eaves. Maesters in Citadel grumbled, but some volunteered. Funding flowed from Stepstone's coffers. Silver minted into stags bore twin faces. A crowned dire wolf and an open door. During long night feast, when families gather to fear old tales, Jon decreed new tradition. The enlightened vigil. Each hearth placed lantern. Inside a slip of parchment naming ancestor who died unnamed. At midnight all lanterns set afloat on rivers. The Mander glittered like Starfield. On Skago's cliffs watchers glimpsed Titian glow across sea. At storm's end, Jon stood with Ghost, Aemon, Rickon, Sansa, Davos, Tyrion, and hundreds of children released their lights. Lanterns took wind, soared beyond walls. Some fizzled, some burned bright till out of sight. As they rose, Aemon's stone glowed in harmonic sympathy, emitting low hum blending with gust. In hush that followed, Jon addressed crowds simply, "Names are lights, keep them aloft." The year turned, marking third since his crowning. The realm still wobbled but steered. Red priests skirmished with Dornish coast guards. Stepstone's watchtowers rang false alarms yet kept sea lanes safer. Old Town dispatched scholars to study deep song resonance, their minds awed and wary. One crisp dawn a raven arrived for Jon alone, unmarked save a green ribbon. He opened note. Dragon's den uncovered beneath ash dunes east of Meereen. 2 eggs unhatched, stone singing faintly. Seller seeks audience. We'll meet at Sunspear equinox. Bring lantern. No signature, yet quill stroke reminded him of old letters from Daenerys. Ghost whined, tilting head. The shard at Jon's chest beat once, bright. He stared toward sunrise. Beyond horizon new storms brewed. Dragons unborn, ice-wandering tropics, silver mines delving deep unknown. But around him, children gained letters, wolves guarded walls, and lanterns floated on unbroken rivers. He inhaled salt winter air, felt crown's weight balanced by warmth of chosen names, and knew the road stretched endless, yet his steps would echo with many footsteps beside him. So the king turned toward tomorrow, cloak snapping, heart steady, ready again to write the next verse where bastards and lords and wild kings of frost would meet in a realm determined, this time, to choose light, whatever song the stones might sing.